Chapter 660. I'm sure you don't forget what Blackie looked like before it died. Hellion Wei Wei strode over and placed her hand on the Alsatian's head. She glanced at Xian Bing's face and said in a calm and emotionless voice, "First, you broke its leg. Then, you broke its ribs. You and Princess Zongjing made it sound so nice. Feed it and take care of it. Hee, you remember these small favors so clearly. Why don't you say that when you fell into the valley when you were cultivating, if Little Black didn't call people to save you, you would have been devoured by a pack of wolves? But you, not only did you not kill Little Black, you even stole its spiritual energy. A trash like you actually has the face to say that you're ungrateful. I'm impressed by your shamelessness." Perhaps what Hellion Vivian said was too shocking. Not only the others, but even the exorcists from the Xianyuan dynasty looked at Xian Bing, as if they were trying to find something from his face. Xian Bing shouted in a deep voice, "Don't slander me. I know, it was you. No wonder the wolf suddenly appeared. It was you who let it out to stop me. You know better than anyone why Blackie was here." Hellion Vivian looked at him condescendingly. "You've been finding excuses for yourself since just now. In fact, if Blackie didn't bark, you would have been dragged away by the Reapers." Xian Bing's fingers trembled, but he refused to admit it. "Third Princess Consort, don't slander me just because you're special. Who can prove what you're saying?" Zongjing Yuhe also said, "Third Princess Consort, we all saw how Xian Bing treated the wolf. There was no abuse like what you said. It's too fake." "Yes, Third Princess Consort, you can't make up a story just to win, can you?" Elder Su Wu joined in at the right time. In fact, he already knew what was going on. Logically speaking, dead animals would quickly enter the underworld for reincarnation. However, after so many years, this wolfhound was still a lonely soul. Furthermore, it still carried a huge amount of resentment. The only person who could cause it to behave this way was its original owner. However, even if that was the case, a wolfhound could not speak. That meant that there was no proof. Xian Bing shared the same thoughts as Elder Su Wu. He would like to see what Hellion Wei Wei, this meddlesome, could do when there was no evidence. The wolf saw through his thoughts and barked again. Its fangs and black fur stood up, and its scarlet eyes were frighteningly bright. If Hellion Vivian was not pressing its head, it would have rushed over and bit the person to death. "Blackie, don't be impulsive. If you bite him to death, you'll never be able to prove yourself. Didn't he wanted evidence? We'll give him the evidence." Hellion Vivian turned around and said to the Reapers behind her, "Tell me everything you know." Hearing Hellion Vivian's order, the exorcists stood up immediately. "She wants the Reapers to speak. How is that possible? The Reapers only take souls when they enter the human world. They don't speak unless the King of Hell gives the order personally, right?" The exorcists felt that what they saw today was more exciting than any other day in their lives. Another exorcist muttered to himself, "It's not impossible. Unless that person has 100 years of cultivation. But this third princess consort, let's wait a little longer. The Reapers might not speak." The exorcists held their breaths. However, they did not know that. As long as His Highness was there. Not to mention letting those ghost servants speak. Even if they were asked to do a zombie dance, they would still raise their arms and legs to satisfy the man sitting in the seat of honor. The Reapers standing behind Hellion Vivian did not move very quickly. Because they were dead, they did everything expressionlessly. Now that they heard Hellion Vivian's order, they subconsciously looked in the direction of Beligaju. They were indeed summoned by Hellion Vivian, but after seeing this human guardian demon, they were completely scared out of their wits. That was clearly the Great Devil. That's right, the Great Devil. That dog-like appearance, that perfect side profile of an ice sculpture, and that untainted and disdainful sitting posture. At that time, Baligaju only glanced at them indifferently. With just one glance, they already knew what to do. Absolutely obey orders. But fuck, why didn't anyone tell them that the great demon was still alive? Did their Lord King of Hell know that this great devil was still alive? Back then, the two of them fought fiercely, and the sky was dark. Lord King of Hell, who lost every time, was in a very bad mood. He was irritable in the underworld every day. Every time they brought back ghosts, Lord King of Hell was not satisfied. He insisted that they go and bring back the great devil's soul. No matter what, they could be considered the oldest batch of reapers in the underworld. Even if they did not contribute, they still had brains. How could they be stupid enough to touch a great devil? Therefore, they were very smart and sent a batch of newly dead reapers to be scapegoats. As expected, none of them returned. At that time, they were simply too quick-witted. In the beginning, they did not take this summoning seriously. They were just surprised that an exorcist could summon the oldest batch of reapers. They did not expect that when they arrived, they would find that there were 9 other reapers besides them. They could not help but be curious about the summoner. But now, they were not curious. They only wanted to complete the great devil's mission as soon as possible and return to the underworld as soon as possible. The human world was too dangerous. It was the safest to be at home. They were really scared to death. Don't be fooled by their calm appearance. In fact, there were only 3 words in their hearts: please let them go. It seems that these reapers can't talk. Look at their expressionless faces. They are very gloomy. The exorcist speculated. The 4 reapers were speechless. Don't spout nonsense. They were born with dead faces. Plus, their reactions were slow. Still not speaking. Are you waiting for me to give you a kick? A man's unique and noble voice sounded in the stream of consciousness. The 4 reapers instantly began to move twice as fast as usual. Black gas filled the air. As one of the reapers opened his mouth, the temperature in the hall dropped by a few degrees. It was not because of anything else. It was because of the tone of his voice. It was emotionless, as cold as a dead person's voice. Along with the astonishment of the crowd, the gloomy coldness slowly seeped into their ears. Xian Bing, born in 72 years. Entered the Tao at the age of 5. At the age of 7, she pushed down a fellow disciple to become an apprentice. At the age of 10, she almost killed her own master because of her cowardice. At the age of 13, she encountered a great calamity. Thanks to the help of the wolf and dog, her life was extended. Chapter 661. Xian Bing took a fancy to the Alsatian spirit, so he brought it back to the sect. He took care of it for a year, but there was no progress in his cultivation. When he saw that the Alsatian could not help him, he felt that he had brought back a good-for-nothing. His temper flared up, and he would vent his anger on the Alsatian from time to time, until he tortured the Alsatian to death. As the messenger finished speaking, everyone's eyes widened as they looked at Xian Bing again. Even the wolfhound that had saved him was beaten to death. How vicious would one have to be to do such a thing? Xian Bing panicked. No, I didn't. Don't believe Hellion Vivian's words. That Alsatian was ungrateful and wanted to bite me. That was why I accidentally killed it. After that, I was sad for a long time. My senior and junior brothers can testify for me. Even a rabbit will bite when it is cornered, let alone a dog that you tortured every day. Hellion Wei Wei laughed coldly. I didn't say it, it was the Reapers. You're an exorcist, so you should know that Reapers know about the affairs of mortals before they die, so you wouldn't spout nonsense. Compared to your senior and junior brothers, they're more aware of the situation back then. The third princess consort is right. The messenger knows the truth. Although they were not from the War Dragon Empire, as exorcists, some of them still had a conscience. Brother Xianbing, since things have come to this, you should just admit it. It will be too embarrassing if you continue to make a fuss. Xianbing's body swayed. He could not say anything else. Sweat poured down his forehead as he looked at Zongjing Yuer and Elder Su Wu. Elder Su Wu did not expect the messenger to speak either. Looking at the people pointing at them, he felt that something was out of his control. Zongjing Yuer's face was pale. She was not as arrogant as before. Seeing this, Xianbing wanted to run away. Hellion Vivian moved and stood in front of him. She smiled. Xianbing, the messengers haven't finished talking. Why don't you listen? Not everyone gets to hear about their own life story. As if responding to Hellion Vivian's words, the messenger of death's calm voice sounded again. Xianbing, you have done a lot of evil in your life. You were killed by wolves and dogs at the age of 25. After you died, you entered the path of animals. Died at the mouth of a wolf dog. Xianbing shuddered when he heard this. He turned his head and looked at the Alsatian who was standing on Hellion Wei Wei's left. When he met the Alsatian's gloomy eyes, his breathing changed because of fear. Hellion Vivian lowered her eyes and looked at him. Her eyes were faint. Good and evil will eventually be repaid. The heavenly Tao is a good samsara. If you don't believe it, look up and see who will be spared by the heavens. Xiao He, go, it's time for you to personally take revenge. Dogs are the most loyal. Before Hellion Vivian gave the order. Even though the wolfhound hated Xianbing, it just stood aside quietly and did not attack. Now, with Hellion Vivian's permission, it no longer hid the murderous look in its eyes. Its black body was like a hurricane as it pounced on Xianbing. In an instant, the sound of bones shattering pierced through his eardrums, and the crisp sound of bones cracking rang out. Xianbing's arm in front of him was bitten off by the wolfhound. His white bones were exposed to the air. Bright red blood splattered all over the ground. Zongjing Yuer was the closest to Xianbing. As a princess, she had never seen such a bloody scene. She vomited on the spot. Xianbing was in so much pain that his face was twisted. However, he did not give up. He grabbed the wolfhound's head with one hand. There was a yellow talisman on his hand. But soon, he found that his yellow talisman could not stop the wolfhound. His eyes were filled with panic and he shook violently. Your Highness. Help. He called for Zongjing Wenren. Hellion Vivian was one step ahead of Zongjing Wenren. She shielded the wolfhound's back and said calmly, I won't help Little Black because it's his own vengeance. However, if anyone dares to hurt Little Black, they will have to ask for my permission first. Also, I would like to advise Crown Prince Wenren. Perhaps there are not many exorcists in the War Dragon Empire. However, if it's a simple fight, the Xianyuan dynasty is no match for us. As soon as Hellion Vivian finished speaking, a few slapping sounds were heard. Dozens of martial artists behind her stood up. Among them, Shao Qi's figure was the most prominent. He stepped on the bald head of an old official and held the black wooden stick that he usually hid in his hand. He looked domineering. Finally, it was time for his favorite part. He knew it. Master was here. Exorcism was not necessary. His master was the biggest devil in the world. These people did not even recognize him. They were still yelling about exorcism. Fighting was better. Beat them to a pulp. Humph, how dare they challenge third sister-in-law. They were courting death. The old official with Shao Qi on his head was in trouble. He kept saying, Your Highness, please be gentle. Don't move. My My hair. Elder Su Wu was undoubtedly the most experienced and astute among them. He reached out and grabbed Zongjing Wenren's arm. He said in a low voice, "Your Highness, it doesn't matter if we lose this battle. After all, we won the previous battle. The War Dragon Empire is at most tied with us. However, if you interfere in the Wolfhound's matter, we won't be able to gain any advantage when the two empires start fighting." Zongjing Wenren stopped in his tracks and clenched his fists. What about Xian Bing? If we don't intervene, Xian Bing will be in danger. Your Highness, we must focus on the big picture. Elder Su Wu's voice deepened. Once we win, we can avenge Xian Bing however we want. The next round will be a team battle. If His Highness and I work together, we can even summon the Judge of Hell, let alone the 10 Reapers. Furthermore, the War Dragon Dynasty only has one exorcist, Helian Wei Wei. The rest of them are useless and useless. Once the third round is over, our army will be able to enter the capital and obtain the right to guard the seal. This was the mission that the young master had personally assigned to him. He had to complete it no matter what. Of course, he was not going to guard the seal. Instead, he was going to create more resentment and destroy the seal as soon as possible. The young master was severely injured and could only suspend the plan to create resentment. However, he could not give up. As long as the seal was broken, he would be able to become the young master's most loyal servant and enjoy the supreme right to eternal life. Elder Su Wu had tasted the sweetness of this a long time ago. Otherwise, with his 80-odd years of age, he would have died a long time ago. It was the young master who had given him the hope of eternal life. He must make good use of it and complete his plan of creating resentment. Chapter 662. Your Highness. Xian Bing let out his last scream before his throat was bitten by the wolfhound. Xian Bing had no part of his body left intact. Before he died, he remembered that he had done the same thing to the wolfhound. At that time, he broke the wolfhound's left leg with a wooden stick. He even cut the wolfhound's hamstring with a sword. Otherwise, the wolfhound's leg would have grown back. Now, his retribution had come. Only half of his left leg was left. Without the wolfhound's bite, he would die from excessive bleeding in less than 15 minutes. Xian Bing fell into a pool of blood. His pale lips trembled as he let out a heart-wrenching cry. He knew that he could not be saved. The elders and the crown prince had given up on him. The only one who did not give up on him was the wolfhound. However, he had beaten it to death. People would always regret when they died. But it was too late. The 4 Reapers dragged Xian Bing's soul out of his body with iron chains. They locked his soul and left without looking back. The ministers did not know if they were hallucinating. They felt that the Reapers were running for their lives. No way. They must have seen wrongly. How could the Reapers be afraid of people? What they did not know was that the Reapers were whispering to each other at that moment. Fourth brother, look back and see if the big devil has caught up with us. Big brother, don't scare me. I am a coward. Helian Vivian, who knew what happened, was speechless. Although the bloodstains in the main hall were frightening, after listening to the messenger of death, everyone knew that Xian Bing deserved what happened to him. The result of the competition was obvious. Helian Vivian had won an absolute victory. 10 Reapers. Not only did she summon them, she even made them talk. The ministers of the War Dragon Dynasty were excited. They all looked at Helian Vivian as if they were looking at a hero. Even the old official who had just knelt down to beg Beligaju for a marriage alliance lowered his head and personally apologized to Helian Vivian. Just now, this old official and official you made things difficult for third Princess Consort. It's just that, we really did it for the sake of the imperial court and the safety of the people. The two of you are both senior officials of 3 generations, and also the retired emperor's subordinates. Just now, the two of you were making things difficult for me, not for me, but for the royal family. Since they are from a neighboring country, we should indeed be modest and courteous. However, being modest and courteous is one thing, and taking a step back is another. My War Dragon dynasty is a great country. Do we need to rely on marriage to maintain anything? The 2 ministers should also think about it carefully. Good men should fight when it is time to fight. This is the way of a ruler. His Highness's thoughts were not difficult to understand. He was thinking of the relationship between the 2 ministers, so the 2 ministers should not disappoint him. Remember one thing, those who offend me, Battle Dragon, will be killed no matter how far away you are. Hellion Vivian's words were firm and gentle, making the blood of the people who heard it boil. Especially that sentence, those who offend me, Battle Dragon, will be killed no matter how far away you are. All the generals who heard it raised their arms and cheered. This was the arrogance that their War Dragon dynasty should have. They remembered that there was such a sentence a long time ago. We are a great country. Our upbringing tells us not to steal, rob, or invade. However, that does not mean that we are weak and incompetent. Once you dare to move your sword towards us, we will definitely beat you until it is too late for regrets. Beligaju sat on the seat of honor, his left hand lazily supporting the side of his face. Behind him were dozens of shadow guards. His right hand stretched out towards Hellion Vivian, giving off an oppressive aura of a ruler. This made the people from the other 2 neighboring countries feel timid. This was only the 2nd round of the competition, and they already regretted conspiring to force Beligaju. Originally, the envoy's plan was very good. The War Dragon dynasty did not have an exorcist, nor did they know the art of yin and yang. In addition, the whole country was in hell. Beligaju was not favored by the emperor for many years and did not know how to form cliques to pursue personal interests. This was undoubtedly the best time for them to take action. However, the result was that not only did the War Dragon dynasty not have internal strife, they were even more united than when the emperor was in power. This was because Beligaju's methods were too ruthless and too fast. Whoever was unconvinced, he would directly behead them. In addition, the woman he married was too powerful. In this competition, the reason why the Xianyuan dynasty lost so much face was because of Hellion Vivian. This woman, not only did she know how to exorcise, but she also knew how to use people. With her words, it would be strange if the entire War Dragon dynasty was not united. Lu Yu and Wu Jing's eyes also lit up. They looked at each other, then looked at the couple sitting on the dragon throne again. Only the 3rd prince could sit on that seat. And the seat next to the 3rd prince, only the eldest daughter of the Hellion family was worthy of it. Other than her, any other woman standing next to His Highness would be inferior. Only her languid and carefree attitude complemented His Highness' indifference and nobility. Are you trying to win people's hearts again? Beligaju pinched Hellion Vivian's hand. Hellion Vivian knew how to take advantage of the situation. She also extended her other hand, pinch my right hand too. What do you mean by winning people's hearts? I am clearly helping you cut the peach blossoms. With your attractive face, you should wear a mask when you go out in the future. Cutting peach blossoms is a laborious job, you have to pay me a service fee. Service fee. Beligaju pulled her over and said in a low voice, don't I pay you every night? So madam thinks it is too little, your head. Hellion Vivian was numb from the wind, and her legs instantly felt weak. This man knew her body's weakness too well, simply hateful. Beligaju acted as if there was no one around and directly hugged her into his arms. You. Hellion Vivian knew that it was useless to question a certain highness, so she simply turned her face and buried it in Beligaju's arms. Hug all you want, anyway, the person that the ministers will be talking about will not be her. In reality, someone as ruthless as the third prince had never put these officials in his eyes. Even those two old officials just now, if it wasn't for the little thing in his arms wanting to keep them alive, according to his temper, he would have already dragged them out and beheaded them. He knew that this little thing did not want him to kill too many people. Beligaju chuckled softly and ran his fingers through Hellion Vivian's long hair. His gentle and elegant movements made him look like he was stroking his pet. He was born handsome, and when he smiled like that, it was as if the snow had just melted. All the ministers in the hall were dumbfounded. They had never seen the third prince smile so gently before. Zongjing Yu'er was even more jealous. She could not accept it. Why? Why does that woman deserve to be treated differently by the third prince? Chapter 663. Zongjing Yu'er pushed away the maid who was wiping her mouth. Her eyes were gloomy, but the smile on her face was still soft. Her eyes were red from vomiting, which made her look even more pitiful. She spoke softly, "Elder, if I remember correctly, this is only the second round. We should be in a tie with the War Dragon Dynasty, right?" Elder Su Wu was still thinking about how to remind the envoys. He could tell that after what had just happened, the people from Huangzi Nation would inevitably have some ideas. Just as he was thinking of how to explain it, Zongjing Yu'er spoke up. He immediately smiled and said, "Princess, you remember correctly. It is indeed a draw. The third round is a team battle. Each nation has to send at least 2 exorcists to the battlefield. They will use spells to summon judges to exorcise the evil spirits that possess the people." Summon judges? Someone exclaimed in disbelief. Usually, it's very difficult for evil spirits to come out of a person's body. If we use exorcism, we can make the evil spirits disappear. But this way, the person will also become a fool. Summoning a judge who is more powerful than a ghost servant and using their evil aura to lure the evil spirits out and then exorcise the evil spirits is a good idea. It's just that this method has never been used before. Once the evil spirits come out and possess another person, the evil spirit's resentment will increase. When the time comes and we can't control it, it's very likely that everyone in the hall won't be able to leave. Elder Su Wu glanced at the envoys from the 2 neighboring nations and continued, "Everyone, don't worry. I will be fighting alongside the Crown Prince in this round. There will be no mistakes. Zongjing Wenren is going to fight." The exorcists from the 2 nations were excited. Zongjing Wenren's exorcism skills had always been unfathomable. When they came to the capital city, they did not receive news that Zongjing Wenren was going to fight. Now, he was going to participate in the third round. In the entire Divine Mainland, other than the guardians of the Exorcist tribe, there were very few people who were better than Zongjing Wenren. He was undoubtedly a top-notch exorcist. He could easily summon more than 10 messengers and make them obey his orders. If such a person were to make a move, then they would definitely win. The 2 emissaries looked at each other and finally calmed down. They had a new idea. "We have 2 people here who have been possessed by malicious spirits, but we haven't been able to find a way to deal with them. Since Elder Su Wu can do it, let them come out." As they spoke, the 2 emissaries glanced behind them. Their entourage quickly pulled the chains and dragged the 2 people in. The 2 of them had their heads lowered, but their eyes were cold and gloomy. Even their fingernails were black. They looked like they were about to pounce on anyone and tear them apart. The people in the main hall were scared out of their wits by this scene. Looking at the yellow talismans pasted on the 2 people, each one was emitting a red light because of their movements. They used to be exorcists. After coming to the War Dragon Dynasty, they sensed that something was wrong in the capital city, so they came to the capital city before us. I didn't expect them to become like this when we arrived. The emissary from the neighboring country let out a long sigh and smiled bitterly. I didn't want to say this at first. After all, it's a hindrance to the country. However, if these two people don't recover soon, I'm afraid that even the ghost chains won't be able to suppress them. They are different from other people. Once possessed by malicious spirits, they are 5 times more dangerous than ordinary people. If Crown Prince Wenren didn't do it himself, I wouldn't have dared to release them. As the emissary spoke, one of the two people let out a low roar. The roar did not sound like a human's. He reached out his left hand and tried to grab the minister beside him. If the exorcist had not held a peachwood sword to his throat, that thing would have scratched the minister's face. The ministers were all ordinary people. How could they withstand such a shock? Their faces were extremely pale. At the same time, as the two possessed people approached, the temperature in the main hall dropped again. It was different from the coldness when the reapers appeared. This time, everyone felt as if there was something extra on their shoulders. Cold air was blowing at them, making their hair stand on end. Elder Su Wu furrowed his white brows as well. Before they came here, they had indeed discussed this matter with the neighboring country's people. They had agreed that they would take care of 2 people who had been possessed by malicious spirits. However, this matter seemed to be more difficult to deal with than he had expected. However, it did not matter. If he and the Crown Prince worked together, it would be a piece of cake to deal with an exorcist possessed by a malicious spirit. Thinking of this, Elder Su Wu smiled again. He stroked his beard and said, "We don't have much to worry about. We just want to see if the 3rd princess consort can accept the challenge. After all, this is a team battle. It's different from the previous 2. If it were not for Elder Su Wu's reminder, the people from the other 2 countries would have forgotten that this was a team battle. No matter how powerful Hellion Vivian was, the War Dragon dynasty only had 1 capable exorcist. Next was the young man who only knew the basics and knew nothing else. If these 2 people were to face off against Crown Prince Wenren and Elder Su Wu, they might not even be able to successfully subdue the malicious spirit, let alone win. Even if Hellion Vivian could summon a judge, it would be useless if the young man knew nothing. The emissaries regretted their decision just now. Now, they knew that the War Dragon dynasty would definitely lose miserably this time. This way, the decision they made back then would not be in vain. Lu Yu also realized this problem. He turned around and glanced at the people from the Elder compound. However, for so many years, ever since the Emperor started thinking about alchemy, the Elder compound had given up on the yin and yang arts in order to comply with the Emperor's wishes. They only focused on cultivating in their dreams. Hence, they could not even produce a decent exorcist. In addition, all of them were very cowardly. They did not behave like the subjects of the War Dragon dynasty at all. Lord Lu, if there's no other way, let me do it. Even if I die, I will guard the back for the princess consort. The young man was still young, but his back was still straight. Now that things had come to this, everyone knew that no matter who went up, the final result would not be very good. However, for the dignity of the country, they had to fight. However, did they really want to send someone to their death? Lu Yu's forehead was covered in sweat. He stopped the young man. Let me think about it. Let me think about it. There must be another way. They were definitely not at the end of the line. However, what was the other way? Could it be that only one person could enter? Chapter 664. Lord Lu, other than me, no one else is willing to go. At least I know a little about sorcery. The young man said anxiously. His face was pale. It was not that he was not afraid, but even if he was, he still wanted to fight for his country. However, that was a path with a slim chance of survival. As a civil official, Lu Yu could not bear to see such a young child throw his life away. Elder Su Wu was certain of this, which was why he was so overbearing. Zongjing Yuer lowered her voice, as if she was worried about Hellion Vivian. If we can't gather enough people, won't the third princess consort lose this competition? According to the rules of the competition, that is indeed the case. Elder Su Wu said that it was fair, but in reality, the rules of the competition were more beneficial to those with discerning eyes. Zongjing Yuer wiped the corners of her mouth with her handkerchief and said worriedly, "Then there's no other way. The War Dragon Dynasty can't send a second person." Hearing the conversation between the two, the young man panicked and called out, "Lord Lu." Lu Yu hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, "Then," he was interrupted by a familiar deep voice from the seat of honor. "I will compete." What? Everyone turned to look at the source of the voice. She saw Bailey Jiaju put down his crossed long legs and stood up unhurriedly. His black cloak reached his ankles, but it was not stained with the slightest bit of dust. His perfect side profile was like an ice sculpture, emitting a diamond-like brilliance. The wind that poured and blew his hair, making him look like a deity from the 4 seas and 8 wastelands. It was just 4 words, but the entire hall seemed to explode. All the officials' first reaction was to stop him. "Your Highness, you mustn't." Even Lu Yu disagreed. He got down on one knee and said, "Your Highness, exorcism is different from martial energy. This time, there will be hostile spirits possessing humans." Hostile spirits possessing humans. Beligaju curled his thin lips into a half-smile. "I would like to see which hostile spirit dares to possess me." Lu Yu opened her mouth, wanting to say something. On the other side, Hellion Wei Wei had already pulled Bailey Jiaju to the competition position. "Stand behind me later, I'll deal with the hostile ghost in front of you. Remember, don't let the ghost see you, your face will be ravished by it." Lu Yu was at a loss for words. Was that the main point? All right. At this time, His Highness was very obedient. He leisurely followed behind Hellion Vivian, elegantly waiting to be eaten. The little one shook his head and thought to himself, "Master is so shameless. How could he let third sister-in-law fight in the front while he absorbs resentment from behind?" Really? The Azure Dragon and the Fire Qilin also knew what was going on. Normally, evil spirits would not appear in front of their masters. Once they sensed danger, they would immediately run away. However, if the princess consort was in front to cover for the master, it would be difficult for the ghosts to detect the master's presence. At that time, as long as the master stood there, he would be bathed in resentment. Although it was wrong to talk about master behind his back. However, some of master's actions were really unacceptable. Bailey Jiaju, on the other hand, was very calm. He glanced at the 3 of them coldly and said in a calm voice, "If you have the ability, you should also find someone to help you get food. Forget about little 7, but Qilin, your embroidery skills are not bad. It has been a few hundred years, where is the female spirit beast that you found?" The Fire Qilin stretched its neck and turned its face away, crying. "You can't attack me like this. You clearly know that I haven't found my other half yet. You even mentioned that I found a female spirit beast. Master must be doing this on purpose. Why are you crying?" Beligaju casually comforted it with his consciousness. "If you really can't do it, I'll let the Azure Dragon marry you." The Fire Qilin was at a loss for words. What did I just hear? The Azure Dragon was at a loss for words. Hellion Wei Wei turned her head to look at those 2 mythical beasts who had transformed into human shadows. She only felt that His Highness' words seemed to have poked an unknown acupoint on their bodies, making those 2 devilishly handsome faces turn into frightened expressions in a matter of minutes. It was too scary. The little one watched silently from the side. Once again, he confirmed his intention of hugging his master's thigh. He took a small step forward and squatted beside Bailey Jiaju's feet, looking dignified. The people outside couldn't see the fire Qilin and the azure dragon, so they naturally didn't know what was going on. They only saw the third prince standing in the middle of the hall. The ministers of the War Dragon dynasty were very nervous. The third prince was different from the other princes. Once he decided on something, he wouldn't allow anyone to say no. However, the third prince had never come into contact with the art of exorcism. If anything happened to him, what would the War Dragon dynasty do? Zongjing Yu'er didn't want to see Beligaju in danger. At this time, she couldn't help but speak up. Her soft voice was filled with anxiety. Royal, evil spirits are different from humans. Once they possess you, the consequences will be unimaginable. You'd better, Yu'er. Zongjing Wenren's cold voice interrupted her. He stood tall in the middle of the hall and looked at Beligaju. Since Brother Bailey wants to try, you don't have to persuade him anymore. Go and watch. Zongjing Yu'er clenched her right hand. Brother, you promised me that you would try your best to negotiate. I want to negotiate. As long as Brother Bailey agrees to marry you as his wife, there's no need for this competition. Zongjing Wenren stood with his hands behind his back. He looked very calm. It all depends on Brother Bailey's choice. Zongjing Yu'er's eyes were filled with hope. She looked at Beligaju. However, the man didn't look in her direction at all. He only stroked Hellion Vivian's hair with one hand. Even the side of his face was so noble that no one could disturb him. Zongjing Yu'er couldn't help but yell at Hellion Vivian, would the third princess consort rather watch the royal put himself in danger than take a step back? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and looked in Zongjing Yu'er's direction. With a queenly aura, she said, he is the safest by my side. Why should I take a step back? Also, Princess Zongjing, didn't your mother teach you not to touch other people's things casually? Beligaju is mine. How many times do I have to say this before you understand? Do you have to think of me that way? Zongjing Yu'er bit her lip and looked at Beligaju affectionately. I just don't want the royal to get hurt. At this moment, Bailey Jiaju finally glanced at Zongjing Yu'er. However, his gaze was cold, and his tone was as calm as ever. People of the Xianyuan dynasty, if you still want your princess to keep her life, you better shut her up now. Chapter 665. Everyone turned to look at Zongjing Yu'er when they heard what Beligaju said. The meaning in his eyes was obvious. What kind of woman was she? The third prince had already made himself clear, yet she still dared to approach him shamelessly. The Xianyuan kingdom was a big country after all. This was too embarrassing. Zongjing Yu'er initially thought that Beligaju would at least give her some face since she was the princess of a country. However, she did not expect him to be so resolute. Elder Su Wu's expression darkened as well. He stepped forward and held Zongjing Yu'er's hand. He lowered his voice and said, Princess, please don't say any more. The third prince is a stubborn person. Your reputation will be affected if you continue speaking. Zongjing Yu'er knew how the people around her were looking at her. She felt as if she had been slapped in the face. Her face hurt terribly. She did not understand why he was not touched by her concern for him. Instead, he wanted to kill her. Why did he do that? Zongjing Yu'er's eyes turned red. As her brother, Zongjing Wenren could not bear to see his sister being rejected like this. The coldness on his face deepened as he asked, Brother Bailey, have you not considered the future relationship between the two countries when you spoke? Bailey Jiaju glanced at him and said in a cold tone, before considering the relationship between the two countries, shouldn't you teach your sister not to lose her modesty just because she likes a man? Or is it because the customs of the Xianyuan kingdom are so open to the extent that they can cast aside honor, shame, and etiquette? Almost every word of Bailey Jiaju's made people speechless. Even the exorcists from the Xianyuan kingdom felt that their princess's behavior was too shameful. They all looked at Zongjing Wenren. Zongjing Wenren clenched his fists. He did not expect such an outcome before he came to the capital city. His sister was supposed to be married to the Xianyuan kingdom. This way, not only would they gain face for the Xianyuan dynasty, but they could also use the marriage between the two countries to keep the infantry in the capital. Now, Zongjing Wenren narrowed his eyes, but his smile did not fade. Before I came to the capital city, your country's minister brought up the matter of the marriage alliance. However, since Brother Bailey has already beheaded that minister, you will not mention this matter in the future. It's not a big deal. You is just being kind and wanted to remind Brother Bailey. Brother Bailey, don't you think you're making a mountain out of a molehill by mentioning etiquette, justice, integrity, and shame? Initially, Zongjing Yu was eager to talk about this matter. However, after Zongjing Wenren's explanation, it became an agreement between the two nations. Just as Helian Wei Wei was thinking about how to answer on behalf of His Highness, she heard a deep sneer in her ear. You're so kind that you insist on breaking up others and being their concubine. The Xianyuan dynasty's definition of kindness is really eye-opening. Zongjing Wenren was at a loss for words, and his face turned pale. Even Zongjing Yu'er wished she could find a hole in the ground and hide in it. Stifled laughter could be heard all around them. Helian Vivian felt that there was no need for them to compete anymore. His Highness's mouth could kill people without them noticing. Zongjing Wenren seemed to have realized that he could not gain the upper hand with his words. He glanced at the two exorcists who were possessed by the malicious spirit and his eyes darkened. Since Brother Bailey doesn't appreciate my kindness, let's see who's stronger during the competition. Malicious spirits are different from humans. They can't be subdued just by talking. Brother Bailey, please be careful when the time comes and don't let anything bad happen. The ministers had been worried sick for Bailey Jiaju. Now that they heard Zongjing Wenren's words, the uneasiness in their hearts intensified. They looked at the two exorcists who were blocked by the peachwood sword. They kept extending their hands forward and one of them even had a gloomy look in his eyes. Zongjing Wenren walked to the center of the hall and held a talisman in his hand. When he looked up, rich spiritual energy instantly appeared above the yellow talisman. Crown Prince Wenren is indeed amazing. The exorcists exclaimed in admiration. This is the first time I've seen such pure spiritual energy. I wonder what will happen when the judge comes out later. When Zongjing Wenren heard the commotion, the corners of his mouth curled up. Since Baligaju refused a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, he would show him how he was going to win. You can release one of the exorcists who is possessed by the malicious spirit. Elder, please cooperate with me and purify him completely. Zongjing Wenren turned around and said to Elder Su Wu. Elder Su Wu also got into position and nodded at Zongjing Wenren. The person in charge of controlling the exorcists released his grip. Without the peachwood sword and the ghost-binding rope, one of the exorcists who was possessed by the malicious spirit immediately pounced in Zongjing Wenren's direction. Zongjing Wenren kept chanting and the yellow talisman in his hand seemed to have been guided. It floated in mid-air and a vague figure could be seen there. He was wearing a long black robe and a paper hat that only the dead would wear. He was staring at the malicious spirit. The malicious spirit immediately gave up on Zongjing Wenren and turned around to bite Elder Su Wu. Its speed was so fast that it did not seem like a living person at all. Its teeth moved up and down and it was extremely terrifying. If one did not want to be possessed by the malicious spirit, one must not have any physical contact with the possessed person. Even touching the possessed person was forbidden. This was the most difficult obstacle for the exorcists. Now that there was a judge, the malicious spirit had begun to struggle out of its original body. Whoever it came into contact with would immediately be possessed. Zongjing Wenren's plan was to completely destroy it the moment it was fully unleashed. Elder Su Wu chanted an incantation and erected a barrier in front of him. The malicious spirit stretched out its claws and scratched continuously. Zongjing Wenren quickly turned around and released the second yellow talisman. The third yellow talisman, the fourth yellow talisman. Originally, he had to release the fifth yellow talisman before he could be considered to have succeeded. This was because the north, south, east, west, and west were meant to trap the malicious spirit. The fifth yellow talisman was the one that struck the malicious spirit. To everyone's surprise, just as Zongjing Wenren was about to release the fifth yellow talisman, the malicious spirit suddenly turned around and charged at Zongjing Wenren. Fortunately, Zongjing Wenren reacted quickly and took a step back. He chanted an incantation and managed to control the malicious spirit. However, the onlookers could clearly see the sweat on his forehead. If it was not for Elder Su Wu's experienced incantation, Zongjing Wenren would not have been able to avoid the malicious spirit so easily this time. Zongjing Wenren finally managed to subdue the malicious spirit. He heaved a sigh of relief. However, at this moment, the judge spoke. He frowned slightly and his voice was as deep as a dead person's. This malicious spirit carries an unknown grievance. It cannot enter hell. Chapter 666. What? When the crowd heard this, they stood up in bewilderment. What should we do? This was the first time Elder Su Wu had encountered such a situation. Zongjing Wenren was ruthless. His eyes darkened as he said, "Shatter his soul." If that's the case, I'm afraid that the person possessed by him will not regain his intelligence. Elder Su Wu considered this point and turned to the emissary in the distance and said, "There's a problem. Malicious ghosts can't enter hell. After a long time, once the judge leaves, the malicious ghost's evil aura will increase greatly. When that happens, none of us will be able to control it. We have to shatter the malicious ghost's soul immediately. Lord Wang, you better be mentally prepared. This fellow cultivator can at most keep his life. Don't ask for too much." When the exorcists heard that malicious ghosts could not enter hell, they knew that things had gone south. Logically speaking, no matter what kind of ghost it was, as long as the judge appeared, he would be able to take it away. However, this time, the judge refused to do so. They wanted to know the reason as they wanted to know what was going on. However, only Zongjing Wenren was able to go against the judge. However, it was obvious that the malicious ghost's violent nature did not allow them to think further. Zongjing Wenren's yellow talismans began to lose their spiritual glow. The malicious ghost was about to break free from its cage. Zongjing Wenren flicked his finger and all the yellow talismans that were suspended in mid-air flew toward the malicious ghost. Then, he flicked his peachwood sword and pierced through the malicious ghost's head. The malicious ghost first moved its empty eyes. Then, it looked to the side and black fog flowed out like water. Zongjing Wenren did not expect the malicious spirit to be so difficult to deal with. With the suppression of the 5 yellow talismans, the malicious spirit was rendered immobile. Its entire body collapsed on the ground and shattered into pieces. However, its pair of eyes were still so cold that it made people feel uncomfortable. In the end, only the exorcist who was lying on the ground was left behind after a gust of wind blew past. The black sharp nails on the exorcist's hands returned to their original color at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, he seemed to be in a daze, which was different from normal. Those who were familiar with the art of yin and yang knew that malicious ghosts could not be brought into hell. Once their souls were completely destroyed, it would definitely affect the person possessed. However, this was something that could not be helped. Taking the danger that they had just witnessed as an example, it was fortunate that Zongjing Wenren was the one who did it. If it had been any one of them, they would have failed to cast the spell. Not only would they not be able to eliminate the malicious spirit, but they might even become the next target for the malicious spirit to possess. Such a result was already quite satisfactory. Zongjing Wenren was indeed powerful. The exorcists turned their heads, their eyes filled with admiration. Zongjing Wenren swung his hand that was in pain. He had a perfect smile on his face. Only he knew how dangerous it was just now, but there was no need for others to see it. Elder, look at how long we've taken. Don't take too long. Elder Su Woot smiled and said, the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, but it doesn't matter if it's a little longer. Just treat it as giving way to the royal family. Elder, you're so thoughtful. I forgot that Brother Bailey has never learned the art of exorcism. I'm sure you don't know the dangers involved. Zongjing Wenren smiled and turned his head to look at Beligaju. Brother Bailey, it's your turn now. Do you need me to teach you something? Those who were smart could tell that Zongjing Wenren was trying to get back at Zongjing Wenren. After all, this was a competition between the two countries. At this time, the prince of one country said that he wanted to teach the prince of the other country. He was obviously mocking the prince of the other country. When Beligaju heard this, he lifted his eyelids. He did not look at Zongjing Wenren. He stood tall and straight in the area where the competition was about to begin. His black robe draped over his shoulders, and his back was straight. His legs were long to begin with, and now that he was dressed in black, it made him look even more noble and tall. The originally small area seemed to have turned into a huge palace with him standing there. It was both dazzling and sinister. Regardless of which it was, Zongjing Wenren, the crown prince, was nothing in front of him. Not to mention, he said slowly and infuriatingly, I see that you've put in a lot of effort to subdue the ghost. You almost got yourself killed. I don't want to teach you anything. Zongjing Wenren's face instantly darkened. He tightened his grip on his peachwood sword. The exorcist from Huangzi Nation could not stand it anymore. He said with a fake smile, Royal, in that situation just now, no one would be able to escape unscathed. His Highness Wenren is already very powerful. If you were to go up there, who knows what would happen? Exorcising ghosts is different from fighting a war. The royal should not mix them up. That's right. Fighting a war is so easy. All you have to do is to draw a white knife and draw a red knife. When it comes to exorcising ghosts, other than guarding against the cunning of the malicious ghosts, you have to be dignified and not be affected by the evil aura. Brute force and martial chi are not enough. The royal should not underestimate the enemy. The other exorcists also chimed in. They sounded like the War Dragon dynasty was bound to lose. Beligaju did not waste his breath on them. He just stood there calmly, waiting for the competition to begin. Helian Wei Wei laughed. Her voice was not loud, but it was very lazy. However, it was clear enough for everyone to hear. Someone, why don't we use brute force to exorcise the ghost today? Stand back a little more. Isn't this far enough? Bailey Jia Ju had always treated Helian Wei Wei differently. His pair of dark eyes were obviously much gentler, with a strong sense of indulgence. Helian Vivian lowered her voice so that only the two of them could hear. That's not enough. Don't think that I don't know why those reapers ran away so quickly. They were scared by you. This time, you have to stay further away. Otherwise, the malicious ghosts won't dare to come over. How can we exorcise ghosts then? With you in front, they won't notice me. Beligaju laughed evilly. Helian Wei Wei was very good at listening to the main point. His Highness was referring to them, which meant that other than the Reapers, all the dark creatures would not be able to detect the dangerous aura emitted from His Highness. Was all this because of her? The reason why demons made a contract with humans is because humans can be a good cover for you, right? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. Beligaju smiled and did not deny it. His little one had always been smart, and this time was no exception. How cunning. Hellion Vivian continued to stand in front. Since His Highness' aura would not be discovered, she had nothing to worry about. Come on, come on. Hellion Wei Wei's thin lips curved upwards as she formed a palm with one hand. An invisible spiritual aura brewed from the earth and condensed between her 5 fingers. Release the ghost. Chapter 667. As soon as Hellion Vivian finished speaking, the person who was controlling the malicious ghost loosened the demon binding rope. The exorcist, who had been quietly lowering his head, did not pounce forward like the previous one. He just stood there, and his expression could not be seen. A disturbing aura surged out of his body. The people sitting at the periphery looked at each other. What's going on? Why is it so quiet? This malicious ghost looks quite peaceful. No, no. He's not peaceful. Look at his hands. In addition to the terrifying black fingernails, his hands were covered with a thin layer of frost. He's changed. He's changed. Almost all the exorcists knew that once a person possessed by a malicious ghost changed, he would become very terrifying. Because the exorcist had been lowering his head, no one noticed his condition. Now that the demon binding rope was removed, the gloomy aura rushed out in an instant. The exorcist finally raised his head. His whole face reflected the gloomy aura. He did not move, as if he was waiting for something. He slowly raised his head. What is he doing? Absorbing the essence of the moonlight. Oh no! This malicious ghost has successfully changed. It's impossible for the third prince and the third princess consort to subdue it. We have to think of a way quickly. What about Crown Prince Wenren? With Crown Prince Wenren's protection, there should be no problem, right? I've never heard of anyone subduing a transformed malicious ghost. Crown Prince Wenren is the same. You mean that even Crown Prince Wenren may not be able to deal with it? Yes. Then, the third princess consort, Hellion Vivian, was getting more and more worried. For some reason, there was suddenly lightning and thunder outside the hall. The malicious ghost lowered his eyes and looked in the direction of Hellion Vivian. He opened his mouth, and the resentment in his mouth gushed out just like that. At this time, everyone saw his teeth clearly. They were no longer human teeth. Instead, they were like those of a zombie that had just been unearthed. They were sharp and protruding from his lower lip. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes. The moment she raised one hand, spiritual energy rushed to the sky. She did not bring any yellow talismans, but all the yellow talismans present were under her control. Swoosh! All of them were erected in the air. A total of 18 of them formed a dazzling circle of Buddhist light. That's right. The exorcists stood up excitedly and stared at Hellion Vivian in disbelief. Their eyes shone intensely, the divine seal of the exorcist tribe. That's impossible. Zongjing Yuer denied with all her might, but she could not change the fact that the 18 rays of Buddha's light were about to descend. How could this be? How could this woman be from the exorcising tribe? This was definitely a lie. She had seen Hellion Vivian before, but she had never heard her mention the exorcising tribe. But how was he going to explain the 18 divine seals now? When Elder Su Woot saw this, his expression changed as well. He knew better than anyone that the protector of the exorcising tribe had always been the young master. But now, someone had actually used the 18 divine seals of the exorcising tribe. Once such a person appeared, could he and the crown prince still win? As if he had seen through Elder Su Wu's thoughts, Zongjing Wenren's eyes darkened and he said stiffly, "Everything is not over yet. Hellion Vivian has indeed exceeded our expectations, but there is a crucial weakness in their team, and that is, the third prince of the War Dragon dynasty." With that, Zongjing Wenren looked in the direction of Beligaju and said confidently, "With the 18 divine seals as cover, we can't see anything wrong. But an evil spirit that has successfully undergone a metamorphosis is never easy to deal with. Once it discovers the weakness in the team, it will attack that divine seal in a frenzy. When that happens, no matter how powerful Hellion Vivian is, she won't be able to save Beligaju." As if to verify Zongjing Wenren's words, the evil spirit looked at the 18 yellow divine seals above its head. It was smart enough not to move forward. Instead, it stood in its original position and sniffed. Then, it spat out a lot of resentment from its fangs. "Boss, what is it doing?" One of the reapers who had been hiding in the dark looked furtively at the center of the hole. Another reaper turned around with a poker face, but he could not hide the gloating in his tone. "That evil spirit is planning to attack the great demon king." The reapers were speechless. They could already see the ending. They were both ghosts, so why did they have to court death? However, it was too much for their boss's expressionless face to show that he was gloating. "Fourth brother, go and inform the judges. Tell them not to come out no matter what. Even if they are summoned, they should not come out. The great demon king's aura has been concealed. Once he comes out, they will definitely be scared to death." Fourth brother trembled as he said, I don't dare to go out. The great demon king will see me. He doesn't have time for you now. Go. Boss urged, wanting to push fourth brother out of the hole. Right at this moment, the evil spirit seemed to have smelled something. Suddenly, its eyes darkened, and its fangs ground together as it murmured, "It smells so good. It smells so good. It smells like human flesh." As it spoke, it looked in the direction of Beligaju. Its pupils moved strangely, revealing the whites of its eyes. "It's there. This skin is not bad. After I devour his soul, I can use it as this body." As the evil spirit spoke, it twisted its head and finally stabilized its body. It no longer cared about the danger of Hellion Vivian's 18 yellow talismans and directly rushed towards the weakest human it thought to be. "It smells so good." It could smell the scent coming from this human's body. This human is definitely not a good person. It could feel the resentment coming from his body. It was so thick and so pure. The fragrance that belonged exclusively to the darkness made him want to swallow it all into his stomach right now. It did not expect this man to have a better texture than the spiritual flesh of the exorcists it possessed. It was an unexpected gain. As long as it forcibly took over this man's body before the judges arrived, even the emperor would not be able to subdue it. The evil spirit thought viciously. Too weak, too easy to take over. It was practically a body tailor-made for ghosts. Such a crazy idea made him even faster. It seemed like he had rushed to the front of Bailey Jiaju in an instant. "Your Highness!" Lu Yu screamed in horror. Oh no, once the evil spirit touches him, he will immediately be possessed. Then, His Highness will be in danger. "Your Highness, get out of the way." However, it was too late. The evil spirit was already in front of Beligaju. The two of them were so close that they could touch each other if they stretched out their hands. Chapter 668. Lu Yu's entire face was filled with fear. This was because he was standing on Beligaju's right side. Even though he was quite a distance away, he could still see the malicious spirit's fangs as it rushed over. It's over. That was the only thought left in everyone's mind. The young man no longer dared to look and closed his eyes tightly. Elder Su Wu and the rest had different thoughts from the War Dragon Kingdom's ministers, especially Zongjing Wenren. If they could use the malicious spirit to get rid of Beligaju, then the rest would be much easier. As long as Beligaju was dead, they could immediately obtain the right to guard the imperial capital seal. After all, apart from Beligaju, there was no other reliable prince in the War Dragon Kingdom. In addition, there were the old ministers left behind by the previous emperor. It would be a piece of cake for them to take over the entire War Dragon Kingdom. The malicious spirit that had rushed over mocked in its heart. This human must have been scared out of his wits. That was why he did not even dare to move. This was perfect. It would be easier for it to devour him. The malicious spirit bared its fangs. Soon, it would be able to devour this soul that was afraid of darkness and obtain this perfect body. Just as everyone was holding their breaths, Beligaju remained standing in the same spot. His head was slightly lowered and his ink-black hair covered his eyes. As he stood in the darkness, no one could see his face clearly. They could only vaguely see that the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. It was a devilish smile. At that moment, the malicious spirit finally arrived in front of Beligaju. No. This person is not human at all. An unusual sense of uneasiness surged from the depths of the malicious spirit's blood. It instinctively wanted to turn around and run away. What? You don't want to take over my body anymore. Bailey Jiaju slowly raised his eyes. The demonic aura that flowed out from his eyes made the malicious spirit feel as if its limbs were being pinched by the other party. Pain came from its internal organs. The man did not do anything, but it already felt the horror of falling into hell. Invisible black feathers fell from the sky and landed beside the malicious spirit one by one. If fear could be seen on a ghost's face, the malicious ghost would have wished that he had never appeared here in the first place. How could this be? How could there be an evil spirit more powerful than him in the capital? No, that's not right. This man was not a ghost. You, who are you? The specter sensed the vibration coming from his left hand. Even if the other party wasn't a human and was also from hell, he shouldn't have been able to suppress it to such an extent. Beligaju glanced at him indifferently. At that moment, his long and narrow eyes emitted a golden glow that nailed the malicious spirit to the ground. You are. The malicious spirit opened its mouth wide in disbelief, and its eyes shook violently. It looked like a mouse that had seen a cat. It trembled and did not dare to say that name. How could this be? If it was that person. It was impossible for it not to sense the other party's aura. Could it be? The hostile ghost seemed to have understood something all of a sudden. It turned its head and looked at Hellion Wei Wei. It was her. This woman's pure aura perfectly covered up her soaring demonic nature. It made it mistakenly think that the other party was just an ordinary human. So, that man had really returned. The fear in the malicious spirit's eyes was so obvious. But the people outside could not see this scene. From the moment the malicious spirit pounced to when it was nailed in mid-air, everything happened too quickly. Other than Hellion Vivian and Xiao Qi, no one knew why the malicious spirit suddenly stopped. People only had time to see Beligaju's body sway, and his fingers seemed to have pierced through the malicious spirit's heart, making it difficult for people to see clearly. There was a loud bang. In the thick darkness, as the black feather fell, the malicious spirit froze in place, and watched as its body started to crack from the chest, and finally, it was shattered into black powder, completely disappearing into the air. From the beginning to the end, this scene was shockingly fast. No one dared to believe what they had just seen. By the time they regained their senses, Beligaju had already straightened his body. The tip of his tongue seemed to have licked the corner of his mouth, but this action was so subtle that other than Hellion Vivian, no one else noticed. All they could see was him adjusting his collar and gloves, so elegant and indifferent, as if the malicious spirit behind him was just a small passerby to him. Zongjing Wenren was speechless, and his face was ashen. How could this be? How could Beligaju tear apart a malicious spirit with his bare hands? Elder Su Wu also did not expect things to turn out this way. He looked at Beligaju, and for the first time, his eyes were filled with fear. This third prince was too uncontrollable. And that hellion Vivian. 18 yellow talismans, even the crown prince could not do that. But hellion Vivian could use the binding of seals so easily. Plus, there was Beligaju, this terrifying man. Once the two of them joined forces, he could not even imagine how powerful they would be in the future. At least for now, he was starting to feel fear in his heart. But he did not know if the young master was aware of this. Elder Su Wu lowered his head. Hellion Vivian and Beligaju would definitely be obstacles in their way of breaking the seal. Because these two people were too powerful. What happened just now? The exorcists opened their eyes wide as they muttered, and reached out to tug at their companions. The other exorcist was also in a daze. This was the first time he had seen such a scene, and he felt a little uneasy. Lu Yu and Wu Jing looked at each other, and their faces were filled with genuine shock. They had always known that the royal family was powerful. But they never knew that the royal family was so powerful. They could even tear ghosts apart. Why would they need exorcists? At the same time, the great hall became extremely quiet. Everyone seemed to have forgotten how to breathe as they watched the godlike man walk out from the darkness. Then, he stopped in front of Hellion Vivian. Hellion Vivian had already raised her left arm and smiled. Just like the first time they fought side by side in the White Academy, the two of them clapped their hands handsomely. Perfect cooperation, cool to the extreme. The third princess consort knew that His Highness would win. No wonder. Ha 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 ha, His Highness is still the best. Some people say that exorcism is different from war, but in my opinion, they are the same. Didn't His Highness still beat them into pieces? Zongjing Wenren had always been arrogant. When he heard such mockery, he gritted his teeth and said, "It's just an exorcism, why didn't a judge appear? How can it be considered a victory?" Chapter 669. The Crown Prince is right. There are two parts to this competition. One is to summon the judge, and the other is to destroy the malicious spirit. Elder Su Wu took a step forward and looked back and forth. The royal family and the third princess consort are indeed very fast. They have destroyed the malicious spirit in the blink of an eye, but they have not summoned the judge yet. The exorcists looked at each other when they heard Elder Su Wu's words. Under normal circumstances, the judge had to be summoned first, and the dark aura of the judge would be used to summon the malicious spirit out of its shell. However, this time, the malicious spirit was able to come out so quickly because of Hellion Vivian's 18 yellow talismans. She did not rely on external forces at all. Everyone knew that if they were to rely on their abilities alone, Hellion Vivian and Beligaju would definitely win. However, there were rules of the competition. If they did not summon the judge, they would be judged to have lost. This was the same as the first round. Someone was trying to use the rules of the competition to pressure them. Elder Su Wu was good at acting. He shook his head and said, "Compared to the messengers, the Hell's Judge is not that easy to summon. It is understandable that he did not show up. After all, the malicious spirit is ferocious." The third princess consort must have spent all her energy on the malicious spirit and could not spare any energy to summon the judge. What a pity. To use 18 yellow talismans of exorcism would definitely consume a large amount of spiritual energy. Hellion Vivian was indeed powerful and difficult to deal with. However, she was still young and immature. She was too eager for quick success and only wanted to destroy the malicious spirit, so she used all her spiritual energy. Naturally, the judge would not appear. Elder Su Wu smiled. He thought that the scene just now must have been Hellion Vivian's limit. This way, he would be able to figure out his opponent's abilities. However, he did not expect that Hellion Vivian would actually smile at this moment. Her lips were half-curved, and her voice was slow and languid. Who said that I did not summon the judge? What? Elder Su Wu's expression changed, and he quickly turned his head. He saw her clench her fists, and her ink-black hair moved with the wind. Only now did people notice that the spiritual energy gathering in Hellion Vivian's palm was even more abundant than before. Hellion Wei Wei stood there as the wind blew from all directions, filling up her cloak. However, she did not move a single step. Instead, she chanted a few incantations toward the fog that was surging in the darkness. Then, she squinted her eyes and said, "Appear." It was just one word, but it seemed to carry a huge sense of oppression. As soon as she finished speaking, a corner of the hall was rapidly covered in frost. The fog and the darkness surged even more violently, twisting into a ball, as if something was about to walk out of it. Every minister felt like they were suffocating. Following that, a loud bang was heard. Something fell to the ground, and the black fog immediately dispersed. In the middle of the empty hall, a 5-year-old boy suddenly appeared. He seemed to be still working, holding a seal with the word "yen" on it in one hand, and supporting his chin with the other. He looked like he had no interest in life, and he even had a pacifier in his mouth. He wore an ancient tall hat with the word "yen" written on it on his head, and was dressed in a pure black robe. His features were exquisite beyond description. He did not seem to have expected to suddenly appear in the human world. He froze in his original position for a moment, then cursed under his breath, "Who sent me to the ancient times? Even if you want to send me, you should send me to the modern era. You're deliberately trying to separate me from Little Hook. This is too much. This child is." The ministers were confused as they stared at the little boy sitting in the middle of the hall. Their expressions were full of confusion. Didn't they say that they were going to summon the judge? Why did a little boy appear? Number 4, don't you think that voice sounded a little familiar? The Reaper who was about to leave suddenly stopped in his tracks. Number 4 laughed in a very simple and honest manner. Yes, it sounded familiar. I thought I was back in hell again. How did I even hear the Little Highness voice? Wait, Little Highness. All the Reapers trembled as they collectively looked behind them. Holy shit. It really is the Little Highness. Oh no, the King of Hell had said that in order to prevent the Little Highness from falling in love at such an early age, he had to cut off all possibilities of him going out. Otherwise, they would be punished. Now, the Little Highness was actually summoned to the human world. He even had a face-to-face encounter with the Great Demon. What do we do? What should we do? The little King of Hell was very calm. He looked at the shocked gazes around him, then took out a small mirror and looked at himself. After making a very domineering pose, he sighed, "What a waste that I dressed so handsomely today, but I didn't get the chance to see Little Hook." Sigh. Hellion Vivian was standing behind him. From the moment the child appeared, she felt that his back was a little familiar. Now that she saw his actions, she was even more certain that she had seen this child before. At this time, the little King of Hell also turned his head around. His gaze swept across Hellion Vivian's face, and his eyebrows raised in surprise. Suddenly, he smiled evilly. "So it was you who summoned this king. What's wrong? Is it because you haven't been able to forget this king's beauty since the last time you saw this king?" Hellion Vivian. You're just a 5-year-old child, what kind of beauty is there? You don't have a chance. The little king of hell put away the mirror that he always carried with him, and said with a serious expression, "In this lifetime, I will only like Little Hook." Hellion Vivian. She was already married, okay. But I can give you a chance to kiss the back of my hand. The little king of hell felt that he was being very considerate. Hearing this, Beligaju sneered and walked over from behind the little boy. His voice was slow, but his eyes were cold. "Then which hand do you not want?" The little king of hell raised his head with great effort. The man's slender legs looked even more powerful from this angle, and the man's chiseled side profile was as fair as crystal. The man was looking down at him. The little king of hell immediately choked on his own saliva. "Big, big, big devil." The child instantly shut up. His amber eyes darted back and forth between Beligaju, and he turned around to run. He was going to go back to the underworld and capture all the ghost servants, and give them a good beating. Such a dangerous creature had returned, and he didn't even tell him. Didn't he know that among the few people that he was most afraid of in his life, there was a big devil with a black heart and a black lung? This person was too detestable. He remembered that he was still young back then. He was only about 3 years old, and he had just taken over his father's job. He was so busy every day. In addition to stamping the documents, he also had to supervise the ghost servants. Thinking about it, it wasn't easy at all. It made him look haggard. But this big devil, other than fighting with his father, actually had the time to come to the underworld to cause trouble. He even wanted him to tear up the book of life and death called Hellion Vivian. Chapter 670. What kind of joke was this? How could he touch Hell's book of life and death? That was a huge matter that concerned reincarnation. A mighty and unyielding little king of hell like him would not compromise so easily. But this great demon actually cut off his beloved black hair. He even said that if he did not give him the book of life and death, he would shave him bald. Although he was young, he still had a basic sense of honor and disgrace. So, he gave the book of life and death to the great demon. Ahem, it was not that he was afraid of him. The main thing was that it would be a waste of resources to match his handsome looks with a bald head. However, the person named Hellion Vivian did not appear in the book of life and death. There were only 3 kinds of people that were not recorded by Hell. One was a demon, one was a god, and the last was a variable. Things like variables were indeed beyond Hell's control. However, he remembered that not long after, the exorcists had attracted the fire of heaven and earth and sealed this great demon with their flesh and blood. Wasn't his primordial spirit completely destroyed? Why did he come back now? The little king of hell thought for a while, but before he could figure it out, the man grabbed him by the collar from behind. "The Reapers, this is bad. You haven't answered me. Which hand do you not want anymore? Why did you run away? Didn't you want someone to kiss the back of your hand? Do you need me to knock off both your hands personally?" Bailey Jiaju held the son of the king of hell as if he was holding a little chick. He stared at him coldly with a faint smile on his face. "Or, do you want me to cut off all your hair?" The king of hell's son quickly covered his head and said in a serious tone, "Can't we discuss this peacefully? I have a family now. I can't just shave off my head." Everyone, this child was only 5 years old. He had a family at such a young age. Elder Su Wu finally regained his senses. He looked at Hellion Vivian and suddenly laughed. "Ha ha ha, third princess consort, where is the judge you were talking about? Are you thinking of using a little brat to deal with us?" Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and did not say anything. She only smiled meaningfully. The little king of hell laughed coldly. His collar was still being held by Beligaju, his little face was vicious and evil. "Who are you calling a little brat? Elder Su Wu's mouth was originally open, was now frozen. He could not spit a single word was he was saying. Apart from that, his shadow was not under his control, was moving towards the little boy. Zongjing Wenren was the first person to notice the abnormality in Elder Su Wu. He did not understand why he could feel an overwhelming amount of yin qi in such a short period of time. It was so dense that it was more suffocating than the presence of 10 judges. Is. Of course. Of a. Is. Of course. He was not the only one who was affected. All the artifacts in the exorcist's hands were making uneasy noises. It was as if they had encountered an unprecedented crisis. All of them wanted to escape. The exorcists looked at each other in panic. What made them even more frightened was that the person who caused this change was actually the little boy standing opposite them. Idiot! The little king of hell bared his canine teeth. He was obviously a child, but his innate yin energy was enough to send chills down everyone's spine. Elder Su Wu did not expect that he would be suppressed by a child to the point where he could not move an inch. At this moment, Zongjing Wenren had already sensed that something was wrong. He asked with difficulty, "Who are you?" "Me." The little king of hell did not want to act cool because he was being held by someone. He blew at the black hair in front of his forehead and laughed bloodthirstily. "You'll know who I am when you're dead." "No, Little Highness, you can't do anything. This is the human world. There are rules. If you kill someone, the great king of hell will make sure that you're not allowed to step foot in the human world for the rest of your life." When the Reapers saw that the situation was getting worse, they all jumped out. However, they did not dare to go near their little king of hell. With the great demon around, it was too scary. Due to the presence of so many Reapers, the temperature in the main hall had dropped to the freezing point. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw this scene. The exorcists' hearts were about to jump out of their chests. There were so many Reapers. And, what did they just call the little boy? Little Highness. Zongjing Wenren's expression changed as well. He was in disbelief. His gaze landed on the little boy's tiger-headed hat with the word Yen written on it. He felt as if his soul was no longer his own. You. What is your relationship with the King of Hell? My father. The little King of Hell's tone was very calm. He lifted his little face and felt that he was especially cool after he said this sentence. He could finally compare his father with others. This feeling was really good. When Zongjing Wenren heard the words "father," he could no longer hold the peachwood sword in his hand. With a loud thud, he took a few steps back and fell back into his seat. He still could not believe it. How is this possible? This is impossible. Why is it impossible? The little king of hell snorted coldly. Is it strange for me to come to the human world? I'm used to it. As he spoke, he lifted his head and looked at Hellion Vivian. Woman, can you ask your man to put me down first? If you carry me like this, I won't be able to pose properly. Hellion Vivian was speechless. You're still thinking about posing properly at this time. That's enough. However, when the exorcists heard the little king of hell's words, they were so shocked that they could not utter a single word. In other words, Hellion Vivian did summon something, but she did not summon a judge. Instead, she summoned the king of hell's son. The exorcists did not dare to imagine how much spiritual energy was required to achieve this. At this moment, there was only one thought in their minds, and that was regret. That's right. They regretted that they had been so blind. They even regretted following the emissary to the War Dragon dynasty for the competition. Even Zongjing Wenren had to obediently greet Hellion Vivian as Great Master, let alone the exorcists. In the demon world of exorcists, no one except for the members of the exorcist tribe would be able to achieve such a shocking level of cultivation. The other party had won this competition right from the start. Yet, they were still acting like clowns, acting all high and mighty. When the exorcists recalled their attitude at the beginning, they wished that they could find a hole in the ground and hide in it. Wu Jing looked at the exorcists' expressions and felt delighted. He laughed out loud. So, we've won. Of course. Lu Yu looked very calm, but he could not hide the excitement in his voice. The Princess Consort has summoned the King of Hell's son. I believe that this time, no one will nitpick and laugh at our Princess Consort for not knowing how to exorcise demons. Zongjing Wenren was speechless. He felt as if he had been punched in the face. He could not bring himself to say anything about the burning and swollen pain. Chapter 671. The difference was too great. Compared to Hellion Vivian, his spiritual energy and Dao techniques were far too inferior to his opponents. Zongjing Wenren held his forehead with one hand and refused to look up. He could clearly feel the gazes of the people around him. It made it difficult for him to control his expression. He was like a self-righteous clown who had danced in front of the experts for a long time only to be mocked. The crushing victory caused the entire hall to erupt in excitement. Zongjing Yu'er opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but she was stopped by an exorcist. However, she was stopped by the exorcist at the side. Princess, you should save it. Hellion Wei is better in terms of appearance. In terms of strength, not only can she suppress you, but she can also suppress the crown prince. Anyone would choose her, not to mention that she is the legitimate princess consort of the third prince. It's too embarrassing for you to be in such a hurry and pick on Hellion Wei's faults. Zongjing Yu'er's mouth froze when she heard the exorcist's words. Bai Yu, get your facts straight. You are from the Xianyuan Kingdom, not the War Dragon Empire. Do you know what you are saying? Who do you think you are talking to? Of course I know who I am talking to. Your Highness, you are the princess of the Xianyuan Kingdom. It's fine that you were rejected once, but you don't know what's good for you. You are not only embarrassing yourself, but also the people of the Xianyuan Kingdom. In the Xianyuan Kingdom, exorcists were of high status. The more powerful an exorcist was, the more arrogant they were. Bai Yu was such a person. Zongjing Yu'er did not expect to be criticized by her own people. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. This was because the exorcists standing next to her were from other countries. They looked at her with obvious contempt and mockery. It was as if she was not qualified to be a princess. Zongjing Yu'er's face was burning, and she felt as if her heart was being scalded. She had never been treated like this before. Zongjing Yu'er could not help but look at the emissary from the Huangzi nation. It was obvious that she wanted him to speak up for her. However, when Lord Wang saw that even the Xianyuan dynasty's own exorcist was not interested in their princess, he was immediately rendered speechless. He thought about the long term. Since the War Dragon dynasty had won, the War Dragon dynasty had no choice but to accept the War Dragon dynasty. Then the siege plan would be useless. As long as they could immediately extricate themselves, they would leave the capital the next day. The third prince wouldn't do anything to them. After all, no country would violently attack their envoys. As long as they did not continue to provoke the third prince, they would be fine. This was also why Lord Wang agreed to the encirclement plan. At the very least, they would lose. However, this was not the end. Because at this time, Nangong Lai, who was wearing a priest's robe, walked in from outside the hall. His pair of flirtatious peach blossom eyes glanced around the hall, and then met Beligaju's eyes. He smiled and said, "It seems that everything is done here. It just so happens that my side is also done. The things you asked me to do are almost done. There should be news soon." Beligaju didn't reply and just nodded his head casually. The smart Hellion Vivian immediately smelled the scent of a conspiracy. Could it be that His Highness did something again? The exorcists still did not understand what Nangong Lai meant. However, they also found it strange that he only appeared now. After all, if he had the help of a priest, they would not have underestimated the War Dragon Empire. However, just as Nangong Lai's voice fell, 3 people hurriedly ran in from outside the hall. These 3 people were wearing the military uniforms of different countries. Their collars were wet with sweat and their faces were full of defeat. "Your Highness." "Sir." "Bad news." Zongjing Wenren looked at the soldier kneeling in front of him and said angrily, "Stand up and tell me properly. What's wrong with that?" The soldier answered and then reported with a trembling voice, Xian City is under siege. The king has asked the crown prince to return to the country immediately to preside over the war. "What did you say?" Zongjing Wenren couldn't believe his ears. He stood up abruptly, and his eyes were so wide open that they looked like they could eat a person alive. Xian City was the capital of the Xianyuan kingdom. Everyone knew what it meant for Xian City to be under siege. The soldiers of the other 2 countries also reported the same news. Their capital cities were also besieged in one night. Who is it? Which army would? Lord Wang was halfway through his sentence when he abruptly turned to look at Bailey Jiaju. It's you. Bailey Jiaju did not deny it. He casually tossed the son of the king of hell aside and adjusted his sleeves slowly. "Yes." Just a single word of "Third prince, do you know that diplomatic relations between countries are not supposed to kill the envoys?" Lord Wang said with a heavy tone. However, Bailey Jiaju's tone was very light and slightly mocked. "Of course, I know. That's why I didn't do anything to you. However, you are more stupid than I thought. Your border is even more pitiful and vulnerable." Beligaju did not finish his sentence completely, but everyone present understood what he meant. "Since I can't do anything to you, I'll just attack your capitals directly. I'll collect the interest." When Lord Wang heard this, his legs turned to jelly. This is too scary. Beligaju is too scary. They originally thought that with the joint attack of the 3 countries, they would be able to catch this new prince off guard. However, they were the ones who were caught off guard. This man took advantage of the fact that they were focused on the exorcism competition and sent his soldiers to attack. No one would have thought that he would do such a thing. No one would have expected that he would do such a thing. He didn't know about the other empires, but when His Majesty heard that he had brought the exorcists to the capital, he knew that they would win. That was why he didn't concentrate all his troops on the southern border. This way, there would be a large gap in the northern border, which could easily become a breakthrough, so... This man had planned everything from the very beginning. Lu Yu didn't understand what was going on. Wu Jing, on the other hand, heard it clearly. His eyes were filled with excitement. Why didn't I think of it? The borders. These people have been thinking of how to take advantage of us. They all have their troops pointed at our capital, so the other side will definitely be empty. If we attack now, we can definitely take down the city. Really, it's too beautiful. His Highness is so good at luring the enemy into the trap and catching the turtle in the trap. Even if Lu Yu didn't understand at first, he understood after hearing Wu Jing's words. The other party wanted to force His Highness into a marriage alliance, thinking that this was the only way for His Highness. However, they never expected that His Highness had already taken down their countries while they were being complacent. Chapter 672. All the officials present looked at Beligaju in disbelief. The two old officials who had knelt down and begged Beligaju for a marriage alliance widened their eyes in disbelief. Zongjing Wenren froze in place. After a while, he regained his composure. His face was ashen. They had lost. They had completely lost. Zongjing Yuer's face turned pale when she heard the news. Brother, what should we do now? Go back immediately. Zongjing Wenren lowered his voice. We are now the emissaries. There is an agreement between the four countries. Even if there is a war, the emissaries are not to be killed. Zongjing Yuer nodded. Her eyes were in a daze and her hair was in a mess. She thought about how she had come in a glamorous manner. Now, she was going back like a stray dog that was being chased. Zongjing Wenren was right. No one in the War Dragon dynasty would do anything to them. However, once they entered the Xianyuan dynasty, they would be hunted down like never before. It was undeniable that Beligaju was extremely ruthless. Master Su Wu regretted provoking such a man the most. He fell to the ground in a daze. He was no longer thinking about winning or losing. All he wanted was to stay alive. The young king of hell was still staring at him. Suddenly, he frowned and said, "Wait a minute. Something is not right." What is not right? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows when she saw him suddenly become serious. The son of the king of hell reached out his hand and a black notebook appeared in his palm. He flipped through 2 pages and finally stopped at the word nihility. He frowned and said, "Nihility Changkong, he was born for 14 years and has finally reached the end of his 95th year. This old man should have died a few months ago, why is he still alive?" After hearing Little King of Hell's words, the reapers standing at the side finally noticed that the light above Elder Su Wu's head had indeed been extinguished. The old man often said that when a person died, the light would go out. It was not without basis. Every person was a living being and the top of their head would emit a white light. Of course, this kind of light could not be seen by humans, nor could demons. Only the Reapers, the King of Hell, who was in charge of the underworld, could sense it. If the light was still on, it meant that the person was still alive. If the light was extinguished, it meant that the person was about to die. Once the light was extinguished, the person would immediately stop breathing. The Reapers would also receive the signal and could immediately take away the person's soul from his body. This was because he was already a dead spirit and the Reapers would be in charge of the underworld. But now, this Elder Su Wu was clearly a dead spirit, yet he had not been detected by the Reaper. He could even stay safely in his body. If it were not for the Little King of Hell's careful observation, he would not have noticed anything strange. What the hell is going on? The Little King of Hell could not accept the fact that such a huge mistake could be made in a place where he was. His father had said that as long as he did a good job, he would be allowed to meet Little Hook in hell. Now that there was a dead spirit who didn't go to the underworld, he could even disguise himself as a living creature and live freely in the human world. If his father found out about this, he was afraid that he would never be able to see his sweetheart again. When the Little King of Hell thought of this, he casually grabbed a Reaper, grabbed him by the collar, and shook him forcefully. "Did you do this on purpose?" You didn't want me to meet Little Hook on purpose, that's why you made such a huge mistake." Cough. "Your Highness, we, the Reapers, are all acting according to the orders given by the High Judge. As for how this Elder Su Wu managed to avoid us, we'll have to ask the High Judge." The Reaper's face was already green, but after being pulled by the Little King of Hell, it turned even greener. The Little King of Hell did not beat around the bush. He said in a deep voice, "Judge, come out." In the next moment, the judge, dressed in long robes, hovered in midair and looked at the Little King of Hell respectfully. Your Highness, is there something you need from this humble official? What's the matter with this person? The little king of hell pointed at Elder Su Wu and asked. The judge glanced at him and furrowed his brows deeply. This humble official doesn't know either. However, based on what we've found so far, it should be related to the aura of resentment in the capital city. Other than this dead spirit, there are also some evil spirits that have been infected with the aura of resentment. Lord Casso and Lord Bing are currently cleaning up the infected spirits. These evil spirits cannot enter the underworld. We must find them in the human world and get rid of them quickly. Otherwise, once the infected spirits enter the underworld, it will cause a drastic change in all the spirits. When that happens, not only will the human world be destroyed, even the underworld's hall of reincarnation will be destroyed. After the little king of hell heard this, the tiger hat on his head moved and his little face became serious. The source of the infection is in the human world. That's right. However, we can't find out what's wrong. Lord Casso has asked Your Highness to return first. You're still young and the human world is not safe. He's afraid that you'll be infected by the vengeful spirits. The judge spoke in a serious tone but kept his voice low. It was obvious that he did not want unnecessary people to know about this. However, this did not escape the ears of Beligaju and Hellion Vivian. The two of them looked at each other and then turned to look at Elder Su Wu. The crowd did not know what the little king of hell said to the judge. They only heard the little king of hell say that Elder Su Wu was dead. Their faces were filled with fear. If Elder Su Wu was dead, then who was the person standing in front of them? The exorcists from the Xianyuan dynasty were the first to act. The yellow talismans in their hands were erected and they looked at Elder Su Wu warily. The envoys from Huangzi country were also in a mess. Elder Su Wu was like an old fox. He turned his eyes and tried to escape. However, as soon as he raised his foot, a wolfhound caught the corner of his shirt with its mouth. The wolfhound had not been here just a moment ago. It had suddenly leaped out of the fog and opened its mouth at Elder Su Wu. Then, it used its fangs to drag Elder Su Wu away. Elder Su Wu's soul was completely detached from his physical body. His physical body transformed into a pool of black water in an instant. The soul's eyes glowed with an unusual red light. He was like a malicious spirit, smiling eerily as he tried to pounce on the crowd. The wolfhound did not give him any chance to infect the others. It opened its mouth and swallowed him whole. When the crowd saw this, they were so frightened that their hearts trembled. Too many things had happened that day. They could not even react in time. The ministers of the War Dragon Empire were undoubtedly excited. However, the envoys from the Xianyuan dynasty felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. Their elder had died a long time ago and had turned into an evil spirit. This was undoubtedly a heavy blow to the entire Xianyuan dynasty. Chapter 673. Zongjing Wenren had lost all of his arrogance as he stared blankly at the scene before him. He looked extremely pathetic. The little king of hell stroked his chin and narrowed his amber eyes. He asked Hellion Vivian, "Did you see his eyes just now?" "Red." As Hellion Vivian spoke, she waved her hand at the German shepherd, "Little Black, come here." The German shepherd shook its head and ran over. It stood on the left side of Hellion Vivian. The little king of hell looked at the German shepherd and muttered to himself, "That's the sign of being infected by a soul. Souls that have been infected by resentment cannot enter the underworld. Even the reapers of hell have no way to destroy them. You exorcists have a way, but from the looks of it, the soul infection is too serious. Father will definitely order the underworld to be sealed off in order to protect the clean souls in the underworld. When that happens, I'm afraid that even the path of reincarnation cannot be used. All unborn babies will become soulless idiots, Are you saying that no matter who is pregnant with a child, they will become a retard when they are born? Hellion Vivian frowned. The little king of hell nodded and snapped his fingers. He opened the black notebook and said seriously, the path of reincarnation prevents dead souls from entering the underworld and living souls from leaving the underworld. It is even more impossible for them to be reincarnated into a human stomach. Even if a child is born, it will only be an empty shell. However, if the underworld is not sealed off, it will be even more terrifying. The human race will become extinct. You have seen the infected souls just now. They cannot enter the path of reincarnation. If one of these souls that have been infected by resentment enters the underworld, it will be equivalent to releasing a virus into the human race. The souls in the underworld will infect one another. When that happens, no one can hope to be human again. And once the underworld is closed, it will have to wait for 5 years before it reopens. This is the law of the world, and no one can change it. We have to think of a way to find the source of the infection before Old Father returns and resolve this situation. Only then can we prevent him from deciding to close the underworld. 5 years. 5 years might be a long time for the souls in the underworld. But for humans, how many 5 years could there be in a lifetime? Since the path of reincarnation had been closed for 5 years, it meant that not a single child would be born within the next 5 years. Hellion Vivian's frown deepened. As a human, she naturally couldn't accept the current situation. Since he couldn't accept it, he had to think of a way to change it. You just said the source of the infection. Where? Hellion Vivian raised the corner of her mouth and guessed, the human world. The little king of hell nodded. My people are still looking for the exact location, but there aren't many people in the underworld who can sense the difference between the mortal world and the human world. Other than Ice and the others, only my father and I can. I'm going to look for the source. You and your people are in charge of the management of the netherworld. Don't let any infected soul into the netherworld. Hellion Wei Wei's voice interrupted him calmly. What do you think? Would they cooperate? Little King of Hell nodded. Of course it's good to have help, but we don't have much time left. You have to hurry. I'll think of a way to delay my father. 5 days, we only have 5 days. All right. Hellion Vivian thought for a moment and nodded. Little King of Hell raised his eyebrows. Are you sure 5 days is enough? Yes. Generally speaking, resentment is used to affect the seal. Since the Divine Exorcist seal is in the capital, the source of the infection must be in the capital as well. The 2 exorcists were only possessed by malicious spirits when they arrived in the capital. However, Elder Su Wu is a little strange. You said that he should have died a few months ago. How did he survive until now? Hellion Vivian's thoughts were very dense. Little King of Hell smiled evilly. If I was still doubting whether we should cooperate earlier, I can now confirm that you're very suitable to investigate the source of the infection. I also think that the source of the infection is in the capital. As for that elder, it's not strange at all. Since someone has set their sights on the Divine Exorcist seal, it must have been planned from the beginning. Someone must have tampered with the elder's body. I got it. Hellion Vivian could roughly guess who that person was. Help me check Jing Wushuang's Book of Life and Death. I want to know who this person is. Jing Wushuang. Little King of Hell's ears twitched as he flipped through the pages. Why does this name sound so familiar? I found it. The guardian of the exorcising tribe. I hate the exorcising tribe the most. Except for the Pei family, none of the others are stable. On the contrary, Hellion Wei Wei was rather calm. Help me to see when he can die. Little King of Hell. He can't die. The guardians of the exorcising tribe were born to protect the right path of heaven and earth. As long as the right path of heaven and earth exists, he won't die. Protect the right path of heaven and earth. Helly and Vivian did not comment on these words. Can the underworld assign this person a position or something? Little King of Hell shook his head. The underworld only cares about the dead, not the living. To put it bluntly, what can the underworld do? Helly and Vivian was speechless. Little King of Hell was very proud. Does killing count? Helly and Vivian, but how was the process? The two of them finally finalized the cooperation plan. After Helly and Vivian finished speaking, she turned around and saw Beligaju looking at her. Behind him, the officials were kneeling. At this time, he had already dealt with everything that needed to be dealt with. He casually threw the blood-stained fur robe to the eunuch who was waiting at the side. The originally elegant and noble temperament was immediately replaced by a carefree and unruly calmness. His deep black eyes exuded a different kind of charm. Come over when you're done talking. Staying with the people of the underworld all the time will make one stupid. When Little King of Hell heard this, he quickly turned his head to Helly and Vivian and said, "If you really want to find the source, it's best not to bring this great demon. Once he appears, even ghosts will be scared away, not to mention people." "No, I can help him hide his aura." Helly and Vivian had long noticed the subtlety of this. When Little King of Hell heard this, he was immediately puzzled. When he was summoned, he did not feel any threat, so why did the great demon suddenly appear? So it turned out that he was using the contract as a cover. How cunning. Then bring him along. Bring him along, and we can deal with anyone. Little King of Hell paused for a moment, then said, "But the most important thing now is to find the source of the infection. If we can't find the source, everything will be in vain. The culprit of this incident may be Jing Wushuang, but the source of the infection may not necessarily be him. He can only be considered a spellcaster. We have to find out who exactly he did something to." Chapter 674. The investigation of the source could not wait. After all, 5 days was not a long time. After sending away the Little King of Hell, Helly and Vivian summoned the Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs. The fastest way to know if there was anything strange in the capital was to find out where the people died. No one could think of this. However, it was not difficult for Helly and Vivian. The Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs did not expect the third Princess Consort to be interested in this. He first looked at Beligaju. After seeing him nod, he handed over the recent memorials. Helly and Wei Wei flipped back and forth and suddenly stopped at a place. Missing for 2 days in a row. What's going on? The Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs took a look and did not pay much attention to it. We are investigating this case. There shouldn't be anything serious. The person who reported the case was a night watchman. When he passed by the alley, he heard someone screaming for help. When he went to take a look, there was nothing. However, from the looks of it, he might have heard wrongly. But people did go missing that day, didn't they? Helly and Vivian laughed softly. Officially, you don't have to be nervous. Just tell me everything you know. Don't hide anything. Everything can be discussed. The Minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and stole a glance at Beligaju. He then lowered his voice and said, "After the night watchman reported the case, the subordinates went to take a look. Everything was normal. There was no sign of struggle at the alley. Coincidentally, there was also a couple arguing. I thought that the night watchman had heard wrongly. He also said that he drank some wine at night and might not have heard clearly. Unexpectedly, the next day, someone reported that their daughter who was about to get married had gone missing. Then, on the third day, someone reported that someone from their family had gone missing." Helly and Wei Wei took over his words and explained clearly, "Moreover, these girls had been to the alley before they went missing, so they were also residents of that area, right?" The Minister of Appointments was stunned for a moment and did not know how to react. How did Princess Consort know? Although it was written on the memorial that someone had gone missing, it was not written in such detail. Normally speaking, if the girls hadn't been to that alley, you wouldn't have purposely brought up the night watchman's report. As for why the missing people were civilians from that area, Helene Vivian lazily picked up the booklet in her hand. Since the missing people were all young girls who were about to be married, then they had to limit their range of activity. Even normal civilians wouldn't wander too far, so they should be staying around that alley. When the Minister of Personnel heard Helene Vivian's analysis, his eyes widened in shock. He looked at Helene Vivian, then at Baligiju. That expression seemed to be saying, "Your Highness, where did you find such a woman who is so good at handling cases?" If the third Princess Consort went to the Ministry of Personnel, then wouldn't the old cases that were under his control be solved? Helene Vivian did not look at the Minister of Personnel's sparkling eyes. She only tapped her fingers on the table and continued, "Since there are similarities, then it's easy to investigate. You can hand this case to me, but you must keep it a secret. The Ministry of Personnel can investigate however you want. Don't tell anyone about my involvement, and don't make things easy for me. His Highness and I will go there personally. The soldiers in the Ministry of Personnel have never seen me or His Highness before. When we meet there, officially must act natural and not give yourself away. His Highness is going to." Officially was a little worried. Right now, in the Imperial Court. He wanted to say that it was not suitable for His Highness to go out of the palace because of the turmoil in the Imperial Court. However, His Highness had just beaten up the 3 countries' envoys, so the people at the border were very obedient. Now, they could not wait to send gifts to the War Dragon dynasty so that His Highness would spare them. They had even pleaded with the retired emperor. After today, the ministers of the various departments did not dare to say anything in front of His Highness. The entire Imperial Court was very peaceful, so there was no reason to stop His Highness from going incognito. But, won't it be too dangerous for His Highness to go? Why don't this old official give him a heads up? Officially was really worried that something would happen to Baligiju. If something happened to him, even if he lost his life, it would not be enough to fill the hole. Helene Vivian smiled. Officially, who do you think can beat His Highness in a fight? The official of the Ministry of Personnel was at a loss for words. Indeed, there was no one. His Highness's martial strength had always been off the charts. Under normal circumstances, if someone provoked him, he would directly go to see the King of Hell. Helene Wei curled her lips and stood up. The official of the Ministry of Personnel glanced at His Highness's indifferent and noble side profile and knew that he had no say in this matter. However, it was a relief for him that the third Princess Consort personally came to investigate this case. With his many years of experience, he knew that a missing persons case was not that easy to investigate. The most important thing in a missing persons case was time. Once more than a day and a night had passed, it would be extremely difficult to find the missing person. It had already been 4 days, and those missing people were still nowhere to be found. Helene Vivian was naturally aware of this. That night, she changed into a commoner's outfit and planned to leave the palace. However, when she turned around, she saw that His Highness was still sitting elegantly in the same place. His long legs were half crossed, and he was wearing a fur coat as he leisurely flipped through the book in his hand. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows and asked in confusion, "You're not going?" His Highness was not worried about her leaving the palace alone. Ah, how strange. Bailey Jiaju put down the book in his hand and looked at her with a look of disbelief. He reached out and grabbed Helene Wei's wrist, gently pulled her into his arms. His voice was low and pleasant to hear as he habitually ordered, "Finish your meal before you go out." Oh. Helene Vivian allowed him to hold her hand and yawned lazily. "Speaking of dinner, I seem to have eaten a lot recently. Do you think I'm fatter than before? Beligaju's thin lips curved up, and his large palm covered her softness from behind. Then, a slightly warm breath floated over. You're indeed fatter. You. Hellion Vivian was sitting in his arms and had nowhere to hide. Her heart and pulse throbbed a little. Beligaju did not let her go. His slender fingers pinched her body, and his soft lips fell from behind her ear and kissed her neck again and again. Hellion Vivian's fingers trembled as she pressed down on his hand. Her breathing was chaotic as she tried to stop him. Not only did Beligaju not stop, but he also increased his strength. There was a little pain, but more than that, it made her whole body go soft and numb. Chapter 675. Hellion Vivian furrowed her brows and bit her lip. The corners of her eyes started to turn red. Don't, that kind of low voice made the light in Bailey Jiaju's eyes even dimmer. His kiss also became overbearing and valiant. Under his burning body temperature, Hellion Vivian felt like she was about to be burned by his heat. She could faintly hear him say in her ear, "Can those beautiful men you dream of make you this happy?" Hellion Vivian's scalp went numb. Her entire body was hot from being rubbed by him. No matter how slow she was, she understood that a certain highness was looking for her to settle accounts. She had just said it casually at that time. Why did he still remember it now? As if he saw through her thoughts, Beligaju said indifferently, "Who told this highness to be petty, vengeful, and inhumane?" Hellion Vivian, don't let this highness hear that you have any thoughts of leaving this highness in the future. Beligaju's large palm pressed down and kissed her softness through her clothes. Otherwise, this highness will really make it so that you can't get out of bed. Even so, Hellion Vivian's entire body trembled. All of her strength seemed to have been sucked out. Her face was flushed red and she slowly gasped for breath. The main culprit had a noble look on his face. His fingers slid down her curves and his thin lips pressed against hers. Did you hear that? A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. Hellion Vivian still understood the principle of not fighting when the odds were against her. She blinked her eyes. Beligaju finally let go of his hand in satisfaction. Very good. Let's go and eat. Hellion Vivian. Wait, did he just finish teaching her? She still had a lot to say, okay. She felt that a certain highness had to be taught a lesson. She was a woman of principle. She couldn't get physical with her every time she was threatened. I asked the Imperial Kitchen to make your favorite spicy crab and tendon meat. Beligaju tidied up his outer clothes. Seeing that Hellion Vivian was still looking at him, he raised his handsome eyebrows. What? You still want to continue? Hellion Vivian quickly shook her head and sat down with her small rice bowl. She had been wanting to eat tendons for a long time. She would leave the education for next time. Dinner was served very quickly. With Beligaju's instructions, the efficiency of the Imperial Kitchen was naturally much higher. The tendon meat was first boiled in water, and when it retained its chewiness, it was quickly taken out. Then, it was stir-fried in a hot oil pan. There was no need to add any seasoning when it was stir-frying. After it was taken out of the pan, it was sprinkled with sauce, and the hot aroma naturally wafted out. When Hellion Vivian bit into the first piece, she felt blessed. The fragrance lingered in her mouth, and the meat was full of flavor. The strange thing was that the tendons were obviously very delicious. She didn't feel full no matter how much she ate. His throat was a little dry, and his stomach was also restless, clamoring for something to eat. She ate 2 spicy crab, 3 bowls of rice, a big meat bun, and 2 sweet date dumplings. As she ate, Hellion Vivian finally realized that something was wrong. She seemed to have eaten all of His Highness's portion, Hellion Vivian paused and raised her head to look at Beligaju. His Highness didn't say anything. The way he ate was beautiful to begin with, and the way he held the bamboo chopsticks could directly take a picture of an ancient costume poster. When he saw her silently put the crab leg in his bowl, he put the bamboo chopsticks on the porcelain plate. He took a white handkerchief prepared by the palace servants and wiped his hands. Then, he brushed the messy hair on her cheek away and said naturally, "You don't need to give me anything. Eat your food." After Hellion Vivian hummed in agreement, she followed the principle of not wasting food and cleaned up the remaining food on His Highness' plate. She knew that His Highness was a picky eater. When he ate things like carrots, although there was no obvious expression on his face, the corners of his mouth would droop down. So, she took the initiative to put the things he didn't like into her bowl. She ate everything anyway. Beligaju finished eating earlier than her, but he didn't leave. He sat on the chair next to her, his left hand on the back of Hellion Vivian's chair, and his right hand occasionally raised to help Hellion Vivian get food. Hellion Vivian ate until she couldn't walk anymore. It was Beligaju who wiped her hands and pulled her up. "Where do you plan to start investigating?" "Of course, it's the person who hasn't been killed yet. All the girls in this area have gone missing, and only one called Yen Lu is still here. Don't you think it's strange?" Hellion Vivian rubbed her stomach lazily. Beligaju looked at her cunning, fox-like face, and couldn't help but lower his head to kiss her lips. How strange. Under normal circumstances, these excluded special people are either the murderer, or related to the murderer, or they're the murderer's next target. Hellion Vivian's voice was faint, but her eyes were bright. "Anyway, we have to find her first." Hellion Wei's intuition told her that this inexplicable disappearance should be related to the source of the infection. Because of Sir Lee's words, "There's nothing strange," it aroused Hellion Vivian's suspicion. Anyone who committed a crime would leave behind clues, but the Minister of Personnel said that there was nothing at the scene. This case couldn't be treated as a normal missing person case. No matter what the truth was, she had to find out as soon as possible. It was not very late outside the palace, and it was snowing. The capital was bustling with people of all shapes and sizes walking around, so it didn't seem strange. However, it was different once she entered the deep alley. The surroundings were dark, and it seemed like there were echoes when she walked. Yen Lu didn't want to come out at night, and it wasn't very peaceful in this area recently. However, it was time for her to hand in the new shoes she made for someone, and she had to deliver it today. Only then did she rush out of the door. Along the way, she did not encounter any problems. She just didn't know why, but she suddenly felt cold, as if someone was following behind her, and it made her feel uneasy. When Yen Lu reached the entrance of the alley, the feeling became more obvious. She couldn't help but pause for a moment. Then, she held her breath and ran forward. Only when the strange feeling was gone did he stop and support his long leg with one hand. However, at this moment, a shadow suddenly appeared on the ground. Yen Lu froze, feeling like all the blood in her body was going to flow backward, and she didn't dare to look up. Fortunately, the shadow seemed to be very far away from her. As long as she ran fast enough, she would reach her house after a turn. At this time, the people in the alley were still awake, and they would definitely hear her. Just as Yen Lu was about to run, the shadow spoke. "Isn't this Lu what are you doing here?" Yen Lu was relieved when she heard the familiar voice. Chapter 676. "It's nothing." Yen Lu relaxed and her voice became faster. "You don't look like you're fine." The figure was still standing in front of the door with a wooden basin in his hand. His voice was calm. "You're a girl, it's better if you don't go out at night." Yen Lu smiled and walked towards the figure. "It's really nothing, it's just that there's been a lot of things happening around here these few days. I'm worried." "Since it's nothing, you should go back." You're the only good girl on this street. The figure kept the wooden basin as he spoke, his voice low. Don't learn from those people. Yen Lu did not say anything else and nodded with a smile. That uncomfortable feeling earlier was so obvious that she could not help but turn back to look. The figure was still standing in the same spot, looking at her and waving his hand, telling her to go home early. Yen Lu did not hesitate this time. She jogged towards her door. Just as she opened the door, she heard a clear and slightly cold voice. Excuse me, miss, is this Yen Lu's house? Yen Lu shuddered and turned back to look at the two people who were dressed normally but were extraordinarily handsome. She was stunned for a moment before she nodded. Hellion Vivian, who was disguised as a man, sized up the girl before her. Her gaze fell on her shoes. You just came from the alley. You. Yen Lu was shocked. How did this person know where she had been? Of course, Hellion Wei Wei would not tell Yen Lu that she had already surveyed the surroundings. Other than the snow at the entrance of the alley, the rest of the place was almost dry. However, Yen Lu's soles were stained with some leftover snow. Furthermore, she did not look well and her breathing was rapid. It was obvious that she had been running for a while. The reason for her running was most likely fear. Otherwise, she would not have shuddered when she heard her voice and turned around. That was a common reaction after being frightened. After Hellion Wei Wei sized her up, she curled her lips and said, "We saw you just now." "No wonder, I was wondering why I felt like someone was following me just now," Yen Lu mumbled to herself. However, Hellion Vivian took it to heart. She turned her head and looked at Beligaju. Both of them knew that Hellion Vivian's words were just an excuse. In fact, they had never seen the person in front of them before. But this girl said that she felt like someone was following her just now. Hellion Vivian's eyes darkened. When she turned around, she smiled. "Did you feel that someone was following you when you passed by the alley?" "Yes." Yen Lu looked to her left and right with lingering fear. She smiled shyly. "Maybe I'm too timid. This area has not been very peaceful recently. I can't help but think too much." Hellion Vivian could see that she was not faking her fear. She eliminated the possibility of her being the culprit. She smiled gently and lazily. "It's not safe for a girl to go out at night. I've heard about the things around here, but I don't know the details. You said that you felt like someone was following you just now, that's why you ran so fast." Yen Lu was embarrassed. "You saw me run. I was so scared just now and I didn't see anyone behind me. Speaking of which, how did you get in front of me? Didn't you say that you were behind me?" Hellion Vivian noticed the loophole in her words, but she was calm. "We took the shortcut." "Shortcut?" Yen Lu was confused. "I took the shortcut. Only the people in this area know how to take the shortcut." Hellion Vivian cleverly did not continue the topic. Instead, she asked, "It's so late, why are you here? Are you Yen Lu, Hellion Wei Wei already knew the answer to this question. She had already guessed the girl's identity when Yen Lu turned around. Yen Lu hesitated but did not answer. Her face showed signs of alertness. Coincidentally, Lu's mother walked out. She was relieved when she saw Yen Lu. "Why are you so disobedient? How many times have I told you not to go out at night these few days? Don't you know that the world is chaotic?" Lu's mother first scolded Yen Lu. When she saw Beligaju and Hellion Vivian, she paused for a moment. Who are these two young masters? Although the two of them were dressed in coarse clothes, they exuded an air of nobility. Coupled with their outstanding looks, it was difficult to ignore them. Especially the person standing furthest away. Although he was standing far away and the long robe he wore was made of ordinary material, he gave off an indescribable feeling. That's right, that feeling was like the high official she had met not long ago. LoveLore's mother could not help but feel a little scared. Hellion Vivian knew that it was impossible to turn His Highness into an ordinary person. Therefore, she was the only one who could show his friendliness. She had studied psychological detective in the modern era. She also knew the mentality of people like LoveLore's mother. When a murder case happened around them, those people would want to seek the protection of the authorities but would subconsciously keep some things to themselves. Firstly, they were afraid of the authorities. Secondly, they were afraid of getting themselves involved and causing trouble. That was why Hellion Vivian did not use any identity from the authorities but disguised herself as a commoner and came to the alley to investigate. However, it was obvious that as long as His Highness was around, there was no way to disguise herself as a commoner. Hellion Vivian thought for a moment and frowned. It's nothing. My friend and I were just passing by this place when we heard that something had happened. Now that we've seen it, I just want to remind you to be careful. Since we've met, it's fate. I have a yellow talisman here, you can carry it with you. Actually, this place, at this point, Hellion Wei paused, shook her head and said, forget it, the officials don't allow us to speak carelessly. Bailey Jiaju knew that she was deliberately whetting his appetite. He turned toward Hellion Wei's direction and glanced at her. His good-looking thin lips curved upwards, bringing out a hint of ridicule and playfulness. As expected, LoveLore's mother could not stand Hellion Vivian's words. Sir, what did you say was this place? Hellion Vivian shook her head again. LoveLore's mother stepped forward. Sir, are you trying to say that this place is not very clean? Seeing that she had taken the bait, Hellion Vivian pretended to be mysterious and said, I didn't say anything. It's good that you know. The people of ancient times were superstitious to begin with. LoveLore's mother immediately nodded her head like a chick eating rice. Then, a worried look appeared in her eyes as she said, ever since the day the authorities came, I knew that this wasn't a simple matter. Young master, you don't know. Chapter 677. For the past few days, the green wolf pup in my house has been barking non-stop. Its barking makes me feel uneasy. Every time it barks, it's at the same time. I didn't dare to tell the authorities about this. Didn't people in my previous life say that when a dog barks at night, it means that there's either a thief or something dirty? Just now, the green wolf pup barked again. I'm afraid that something bad will happen to my daughter. If young master has any idea, can you help me? LoveLore's mother said sincerely. Hellion Vivian naturally agreed. She said, I need to check the feng shui of your house. Then, she successfully stepped through the wooden door of the Yen family. The Yen family lived in a very ordinary courtyard in the capital. There were some winter cabbages growing in the courtyard. Their family background was also ordinary. Hellion Wei looked around and did not notice anything unusual. She looked at the wolfhound hiding in the dark. Others couldn't see the wolf, but the wolf cub could sense the kingly aura of its kind. It waved its paws in front of it, but didn't dare to make a sound. LoveLore's mother found it strange. It was barking just now. Why is it so quiet now? The wolf cub. There's a big guy in front of it. How can it not be quiet? Boss. Compared to the wolf cub's arrogance, the wolf cub was both timid and excited. It kept running in circles. Hellion Vivian gave the wolf cub a look. The wolf cub immediately walked to the wolf cub and barked twice. As expected, the wolf cub barked happily. Woof, 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 woof. It seemed to be answering a question. LoveLore's mother didn't care. She turned to Hellion Vivian and asked, Young master, is everything okay in our house? Helian Wei Wei faintly hummed, but her eyes carried a thoughtful look. This was also what Helian Wei Wei felt was strange. She walked around in a circle, almost every house looked very normal, even the entrance of the alley didn't have the slightest bit of qi. If there was something unclean, not to mention the wolf dog, a certain highness would have long detected it. But unfortunately, they had already walked around in a circle, and still didn't find anything. Lu Er's mother was relieved when she heard Helian Vivian's words. At the same time, she was disappointed. Her daughter had been feeling uneasy recently. How could she be fine? Helian Vivian saw through her thoughts. She added, "There's nothing wrong with the feng shui, but the general trend of the houses around here isn't very good. Madam, if it's not too much trouble, I'd like you to tell me what's the connection between the disappearances. There are some things that you can't tell the people in the yamen. You have to tell me. Otherwise, even if I want to help your daughter, I don't know where to start." Lu Er's mother hesitated for a moment before saying, "We all live on the same street, so we see each other often. It's not that we keep in touch, but these girls are all..." She paused, obviously finding it difficult to continue. Helian Vivian looked at her. "Madam, every wrong has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. If we can't find the source, I'm afraid that unclean thing won't leave." Lu Er's mother was so frightened that her face turned pale. "It's nothing serious, but it's not good for a girl's reputation to speak of such things. These girls are interested in Lord Zhang's second young master. Second young master Zhang often comes to the entrance of the alley to hang out." Helian Wei Wei also understood when some words were said to stop before going too far. The light in her eyes flashed. "Second young master Zhang. Mother, don't spout nonsense." Yen Lu tugged at her mother's sleeve and bit her thin lips. "What if someone hears us?" Lu Er's mother finally reacted. She said to Helian Vivian, "Young master, I don't mean anything else. It's fine if you hear us, but please don't tell anyone." "Madam, don't worry. I'm not a gossipy person." Helian Vivian looked at Yen Lu again. She was still puzzled. Since she was not the murderer and everything in the house was normal, why was she not harmed? Was it because she was the only one among these girls who did not interact with young Master Zhang? After Helian Vivian got the information she wanted, she looked at Beligaju again. His Highness stood tall and straight with an indifferent expression throughout the whole process. However, even so, it was enough to make the people who were looking at him blush shyly. Yen Lu was one of them. "Young master, would you like to have some tea too?" At that moment, something seemed to run past Yen Lu's feet. She shrieked and leaned towards Beligaju without looking. Her face was full of panic. There's something there." In a split second, the originally windless dark night soared with layer after layer of black fog. Bailey Jiaju seemed to have melted into the darkness. His ruthless, ice-cold eyes fell on the small hand on his own arm. The ridicule at the corner of his mouth was replaced by a danger that made people tremble with fear. Yen Lu seemed to have realized that her actions were inappropriate. The shyness on her face thickened. However, she did not notice the clear murderous intent in the man's eyes. Helian Vivian knew His Highness very well. Her first reaction was to hold Beligaju's arm. She said in a low voice, she didn't do it on purpose. Beligaju still looked indifferent. However, the murderous intent in his eyes was gone. He untied his outer robe with one hand and threw it on the ground. Yen Lu was extremely embarrassed when she saw this. She stammered, "I'm sorry for being rude. Something seemed to have run past my feet just now, so Lu are you all right?" Lu Er's mother asked anxiously. Yen Lu shook her head. She looked at her feet and rubbed her arms. It's a rat. Why would there be a rat at this time? Why aren't these rats afraid of humans? Hellion Vivian's eyes flashed. Indeed, there should be very few rats on the streets at this time. It was winter after all. Were they not afraid of the cold? Could it be that it was like the time at Green Dragon Lake? That the resentment here was strong enough to force the rats out? No, that was not right. If there was resentment, His Highness should have noticed it. However, His Highness did not feel anything. These rats are not normal. It had been a long time since she had a conversation with her stream of consciousness. She heard His Highness' low and evil voice. Hellion Vivian missed Yuan Ming, who only knew how to laugh evilly. Miss Yuan Ming. There was a slight rise in his magnetic voice. Hellion Vivian denied firmly, no. Beligaju looked at her calmly. Hellion Vivian changed the topic immediately. Why are these rats not normal? They don't have souls. Chapter 678. No soul. Hellion Vivian immediately frowned. How can a rat wander around without a soul? Although she was not sure why this was the case, it was clear that there was something in this street that they had not detected. What is it? Why can't His Highness sense it? Beligaju turned around and said with a hint of mockery in his voice, "It's probably something like that, Elder. It's neither alive nor dead. Even the surrounding air has become unpleasant." Unpleasant. Hellion Vivian's nose twitched, but she could not smell anything. On the other hand, the wolfhound in front of her kept sniffing the ground but did not seem to have a specific direction. "I can't wait like this any longer." Hellion Vivian asked Yen Lu to carry the yellow talisman with her. She politely bid farewell to the Yen mother and daughter. When she reached the door, she said softly, "Blackie, let's go." The wolfhound finally raised its head and ran to Hellion Vivian. The little wolfhound in the courtyard started howling again. Hellion Wei Wei and Bailey Jia Ju did not turn around. The alley was long and deep. Initially, it would have taken them 7 to 9 minutes to reach the entrance of the alley from the Yen family's residence. However, thanks to Lu Er's mother's reminder, they finally found a shortcut. The path was very dark, but it only took them 2 minutes to reach the entrance of the alley. Therefore, the people nearby would usually take the shortcut. Therefore, the Yamen had a problem with their investigation at the beginning. Without the people familiar with the streets, the officials from the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs did not know that there was a shortcut here. Naturally, they did not investigate it correctly. Hellion Vivian looked at the dark and deep path. There were 9 households along the way, including the Yen family. They were all small households with their wooden doors closed. It looked very peaceful. The Zhang family that Lu Er's mother mentioned was also among them. However, it was closer to the outside and had a red door with stone lions. Naturally, it looked more majestic than the other residences in the alley. The wolfhound walked forward. Its black fur seemed to have blended into the night. Its entire body exuded an indescribable aura. Suddenly, it stopped in its tracks and looked up. Hellion Vivian also stopped and followed the big wolfhound's gaze. A young master dressed in fine clothes was walking towards them. Behind him was a manservant, who pleaded, "Young master, old master said to let you stay at home for 1 more day. You can only come out after the officials from the Ministry of Appointments are done with the case. Otherwise, if those officials see you, what are you nagging about? This young master has been at home for 3 days. My entire body is about to be crippled. What's wrong with coming out for a stroll?" The man in the fur cloak impatiently flung the servant's hand away. He turned his head and met the eyes of Hellion Vivian and Beligaju. All of a sudden, his line of sight fell on Bailey Jia Ju's face. With a haughty attitude, he said, where did this poor scholar come from? Hellion Vivian had always known about His Highness' ability to attract hatred. With his face in front of other men, it was true that he would attract a lot of jealousy. But, poor scholar. Hellion Vivian laughed. She only felt that the person in front of her was extremely stupid. The man was still at the entrance of the alley. He looked behind Hellion Vivian and Beligaju with his head held high. The displeasure on his face became more obvious. He looked at Hellion Vivian and the others as if he was looking at his own subordinates. Going to the Yen family again. Seriously, why are there so many people who don't understand logic nowadays? As he spoke, the man took 2 steps forward. He was very close to Beligaju. Don't blame this young master for not reminding you. You can't win against this young master. It's best if you give up. Don't think that you're so great just because you can study. Which girl would be willing to follow you if you're dressed so shabbily? Beligaju didn't say anything. He only raised his handsome eyebrows. His left hand was still leisurely adjusting his cuffs. Hellion Vivian watched as Little Black charged towards the man. Its black fur seemed to carry the wind as it bit the man's leg. Ah! In an instant, the man's face turned pale. He bent his legs and knelt on the ground. He was still looking left and right. He didn't understand why he felt like he was bitten by something. When the servant saw his young master kneel, he thought that he slipped on the snow. He quickly helped the man up. Young master, are you all right? The noise was neither loud nor soft. It was so loud that the people in the alley opened their doors and stuck their heads out to take a look. The man immediately felt that he had lost face. He swung his leg and blocked Beligaju's path. Good, you dare to plot against this young master. Do you know who I am? Let me tell you, if you don't kneel down and apologize to this young master today, don't even think about leaving here. Bailey Jiaju did not even look at him as he strolled past him. The man had never seen anyone who didn't care about him. He shouted in a low voice, "Go, call the officers who are still investigating the case over. Tell them that this young master found a suspicious person and has clues to provide." But master ordered. The servant still wanted to say something. The man sneered. Father ordered you to clear me of suspicion. Now that there's someone more suspicious than this young master, what are you worried about? Call my father over as well. This young master wants to see how they can escape. When Hellion Vivian heard this, her eyes paused. She reached out and grabbed His Highness's sleeve. The corner of her mouth curled up. She communicated with him in her mind. It sounds like this person has a strong background. The second young master of the Zhang family. Beligaju slowly spat out these 5 words. Hellion Vivian knew that His Highness had always been smart, so it wasn't strange that he could guess the other person's identity. She also knew that the slower His Highness spoke, the more ruthless he would be when he messed with someone. Hellion Vivian didn't want to mourn for the second young master of the Zhang family anymore. She knew that the other party was definitely going to die. She began to mourn for Master Zhang. No matter what kind of officer the other party was, he probably couldn't keep his Dai Hua Ling hat this time. Sigh, Hellion Vivian glanced at the second young master of the Zhang family again. She thought to herself, this is such a troublemaker. The others were leaning against the door and looking in their direction. Yen Lu immediately recognized that the person who had a conflict with the second young master of the Zhang family was one of the 2 young masters who had just left their house. She ran over to help Beligaju. Young Master Zhang, they're just geomancers. They're not suspicious. You've misunderstood. Hellion Vivian instinctively frowned when she heard this. She and His Highness did not use their martial chi just now because they were afraid of alerting the enemy. Because on this street, one of the families must be the murderer. Chapter 679. Whether it was the time of the crime or the circumstances of the crime, only a person who lived on this shortcut would be able to leave no traces behind in just 2 minutes. According to the night watchman's testimony, he only heard one cry for help. Because it was too fast, he thought he had misheard. Today, Yen Lu had also said that she felt like someone was watching her when she was coming back. Hellion Vivian's first instinct told her that Yen Lu did not think too much about it. Sometimes, a person's senses could detect danger earlier than their eyes. In other words, the danger was in this street. If Hellion Vivian's guess was correct, the night watchman did not mishear, but that person only had time to scream once. This was also a suspicious point. Under normal circumstances, when a person sensed danger, their first reaction would be to stop and then quicken their pace, especially when they felt that someone was following them. When the danger was close, people would instinctively call for help. There would be at least 2 or more cries for help. This was in line with the most basic human reflex. Yet, the night watchman only heard one cry. Other than the first victim, the rest did not even cry for help. Hellion Vivian had been wondering why this was. Before she could solve this question, she did not want anyone to know that they were exorcists. Now that Yen Lu had said this, it undoubtedly messed up her plan. Hellion Vivian sighed in her heart. She could only continue to pretend to be a feng shui master. When second young Master Zhang heard Yen Lu pleading for mercy and looked at her slightly reddened cheeks, his resentment towards Bailey Jia Ju grew. However, on the surface, he appeared to be righteous. Miss Yen, I know that you want to save them, but who can guarantee that they are really good at reading feng shui? If they are really here to look at feng shui, why didn't they come earlier or later? Why did they only come to the alley when something happened? They didn't just walk around, they even found this shortcut. Who knows what their purpose is? I don't think they are here just to look at feng shui. It was undeniable that second young Master Zhang was a little smart. It was this cleverness that made the surrounding people vigilant. The people of several households looked at each other, obviously on guard. Hellion Vivian knew that she could no longer pretend to be a feng shui master to gather information, so she simply observed everyone's expression. Yen Lu was still pleading for them. Young Master Zhang, they are indeed feng shui masters. This young master even gave me a yellow talisman to keep me safe. Hellion Vivian was speechless. Why don't you just tell the whole world that you have a talisman on you and wait for people to come and cheat you? Hellion Wei sighed again. She didn't know what to do with this kind and pure girl. After all, this girl was trying to protect them. She just didn't know if the yellow talisman would be able to save her life at the crucial moment if she said it out loud. Hellion Wei was a little worried, but at this point, she could only see wherever she went. It was obvious that second young Master Zhang did not want to let them go. To be precise, he did not want to let His Highness go. Yen Lu's pleading angered him. Hellion Vivian communicated with His Highness using her consciousness stream. Next time, it's better for you to darken your face when you go out. You're attracting too much attention. The main thing is, this girl will always bring you trouble. Beligaju did not say anything. He only glanced at her calmly. His meaning was simple: if you say another word, I'll kill you right away to save you the trouble. Hellion Vivian was helpless. Master, you should just continue to look cool. Don't do anything, please don't do anything. Once they did, they would not be able to find anything. If they did not find the source and simply killed the culprit, the source of infection would probably still exist. Therefore, they had to know which family was the problem. One of Hellion Vivian's principles was not to kill the innocent. No matter how ruthless or insidious the people under young Master Tang were, they all followed this principle. Of course, those who kept provoking her were exceptions, like this second young Master Zhang before her. Lady Yen, you're too kind. What can a yellow talisman prove? If you want to disguise your identity, you'll need some tools. Second young Master Zhang was very polite to Yan Lu, behaving like an elegant gentleman. Yan Lu wanted to say something, but realized that he always had something to say to her. A person dressed like a scholar could not stand it anymore. He put down the book in his hand and was about to walk over. "Why are you so nosy?" someone called him from behind. Helene Vivian looked over and saw an old woman pulling her son back, as if she was afraid of getting into trouble. However, when second young Master Zhang saw the scholar, he smirked in disdain, then continued to talk to Yan Lu. "Lady Yan, it's cold outside. You should go back first. I'll ask my father to let these two people go for your sake. As long as they don't come to this alley in the future, everything will be fine." "Don't come to this alley in the future." Yan Lu, mumbled to herself in a daze. She glanced at Beligaju again, slightly disappointed. Beligaju did not look at her, but suddenly turned back to look at the alley. He walked one round and frowned. "What's wrong?" Helene Vivian asked in a low voice. Beligaju's eyes darkened. There was something just now. Helene Vivian followed his gaze, but it was still the same people in the alley. She could not pinpoint their exact location. Yan Lu panicked when she saw Beligaju's indifference. Her tone became faster. "Master, quickly tell young Master Zhang that you won't come to this alley in the future." According to His Highness's character, he would not say anything. He stood there with an indifferent look in his eyes, looking like a noble. The more second young Master Zhang looked at him, the angrier he got. Coincidentally, the servant brought people over from the side of the street. There were 6 soldiers and a civil official wearing a black gauze hat. "What's going on? What's going on here?" The civil official saw the snow stains on his son's legs at first glance. His eyes fell on Beligaju and Helene Vivian sternly, his face full of anger and pressure. These are the suspects you were talking about." Second young Master Zhang nodded. "Yes, father. These 2 people even pretended to be geomancers in an attempt to get away with it. You said that if anything were to happen in the alley, it would be the Yen family. However, these 2 people did not go anywhere, they only went to the Yen family. It's not like I've never seen a geomancer before. A real geomancer would not dress like this. They didn't even have a copper coin on them. One look and you can tell that they're fake." Chapter 680. Helene Vivian then remembered that all feng shui masters would have copper coins hanging on their bodies. Only when they could exorcise evil spirits would they have yellow talismans. Now, she and His Highness had skipped the process of hanging copper coins and directly gave Yan Lu a yellow talisman. It was indeed illogical. No wonder second young Master Zhang guessed that they had other motives for coming here. Lord Zhang was originally anxious. Just today, news came from above that the Minister of Personnel, Lord Li, would personally investigate the case. He was still worried about this. Once the case at the alley was investigated in detail, it would be difficult for his beloved son not to be implicated. Now that there was a scapegoat, everything would be easy to handle. "Guards, take these 2 suspects who are impersonating feng shui masters away." Lord Zhang glanced at Helene Vivian and the rest. He already had a plan in mind. He would use these 2 to close the case. When Helene Wei saw Lord Zhang's actions, she immediately understood what he was thinking. The corners of her mouth lifted, and she smiled faintly. "Lord Zhang, you want to arrest us based on your son's one-sided statement. Isn't this too arbitrary of an official? Aren't you afraid that you will be wrongly accused? Everyone who is arrested by me says that they are wrongly accused." Lord Zhang glanced coldly at Helene Vivian. "But no matter how stubborn they are, they will not benefit from it in the end." Helene Vivian smiled. "What about your son?" Since Lord Zhang is so wise, don't you know that all the missing people know your son and have interacted with him for a period of time? We are just here to check out the feng shui in the alley and Lord Zhang wants to arrest us. Isn't your son, who is closely related to all the missing people, more suspicious? Hearing this, Lord Zhang's expression suddenly changed. Even Zhang Yu himself showed a trace of guilt on his face. The people who were standing at the entrance to watch the commotion stopped what they were doing and looked at Zhang Yu. Among them, a woman dressed in coarse cloth spoke with a trembling voice, "Young Master Zhang, is it you? My Ling Er went out that day to see you. But she never came back after she left. I originally thought that this old woman was just letting her imagination run wild. Apart from meeting Ling Er, who else could it be? Did you see anyone else? What do you think our Ling Er is? She even broke off the engagement with old lady Wang for you, you scum." As she spoke, she reached out to pull Zhang Yu's clothes. "You old woman, are you done yet?" Zhang Yu pushed her away in disgust. If it wasn't for Helian Wei Wei supporting her from behind, she would have fallen to the ground long ago. However, Zhang Yu was full of disapproval. "I'm a scum." "Scum? How good do you think your daughter is? Every time she sees me, she can't wait to get close to me. To be honest, I didn't think I would like her at first. Who told her to be so proactive? I only coaxed her a little and she really thought she was a treasure. Did she think I would marry her? Look at her own background. It's fine for us to play together. After all, she is quite pretty. If she really wants to marry into our Zhang family, she has to be able to endure loneliness. Her fiancé was away for a few days, and she seduced me. She even sent someone to deliver a letter to me in the middle of the night. This is all done by your precious daughter." Her eagerness really opened my eyes. You. The woman was breathless from Zhang Yu's words. Zhang Yu laughed. "Besides, you were the one who broke off the engagement with old lady Wang, right? At that time, everyone on this street was present. What did you say about that scholar?" "Oh, right. You said that they would never be successful in their lives. Ling Er still gave it to me. I was lucky enough to let them know what was good for them and agree as soon as possible. You said that I'm scum. Why don't you think about how vain you and your daughter are? I also saw through your Ling Er, so I didn't want to continue with her. I didn't expect that she would still shamelessly pester me. I can't get rid of her no matter how hard I try." The woman was speechless. After all, she did say that back then. Her old face was red and white as she looked at the people around her. Most of the people still remembered her words clearly. No one jumped out to speak for her. The woman looked around. Seeing that no one was helping her, she simply sat on the ground and cried. "My poor Ling Er. She was ruined just like that." Zhang Yu couldn't be bothered to look at her again. He tidied up his clothes. Helian Wei Wei looked at this scene and did not help the woman up like she used to. Although the second young master of the Zhang family was very bad. Based on the current situation, Ling Er's family wouldn't be any better. No wonder Lu Er's mother hesitated when talking about these girls. Helian Vivian guessed that Lu Er's mother wanted to say that they were indecent. Later on, she was afraid that it would cause trouble, so she simply changed her words. Thinking about it, all young ladies would want to marry a rich and powerful husband. This second young master of the Zhang family was somewhat handsome and knew how to use words to coax girls. In addition, with his status, he would definitely be popular. It would be very convenient for him to flirt with anyone he wanted. If it wasn't because the path of reincarnation would be affected, Helian Vivian wouldn't want to touch this kind of case under normal circumstances. In her opinion, one was willing to be beaten and the other was willing to be beaten. There were many cases like this in modern times. Some people didn't know how to respect themselves. They casually went to a hotel with a stranger through online platforms and were killed in the end. Helly and Wei Wei didn't know why there were so many practical examples out there, but there were still people who would touch the bottom line for the opportunity to fly up the branch and become a phoenix, thinking that they would get the opportunity to fly up the branch and become a phoenix. Even breaking off the engagement because of this. Helly and Vivian's fingers paused. Breaking off the engagement. But in comparison, Yen Lu Her is much cuter. Helly and Vivian thought about this and smiled at Yen Lu Er. Yen Lu Er was really confused by the other party's laughter. She blinked her eyes in confusion. Beligaju pulled Helly and Vivian over possessively and said in a low voice, "What are you laughing at?" Helly and Vivian. She wasn't laughing at random. "Next time, don't smile at anyone other than me." His Highness' expression was very calm. However, as smart as Helly and Vivian was, she could smell jealousy. She felt helpless. Yen Lu liked His Highness, she should be the one to be jealous. Seeing the change in front of him, Lord Zhang's eyes darkened. He said to Helly and Vivian, "I've underestimated you. You can pin the blame on you with just a few words. You're really something. Do you think you can get away with this and get away with it? You're still talking and laughing. Who do you think I am? Take them all away." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.